Woman is fired for being pregnant, but the new owner of the company had been watching everything and calls her into his office, where he falls in love with her and says he wants to take care of her and the baby. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The rain pounded against the windows of Peterson and Associates like an ominous drumbeat as Sarah Morgan stared at the pink slip in her trembling hands. 3 years of dedication, countless late nights, and record-breaking sales numbers, all reduced to a single sheet of paper with the words "Termination of Employment" printed in cold, unfeeling type. "I'm sorry, Sarah, but the company is going through restructuring," Linda from HR explained, unable to meet Sarah's eyes. "The new owner has implemented strict policies about certain situations." Sarah instinctively placed a protective hand over her barely visible 4-month baby bump. "Certain situations," she repeated, her voice hollow. "You mean my pregnancy?" Linda shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "We're calling it a performance-based decision. Your numbers have dipped in the last quarter." "By 3%, Sarah countered, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "After I increased departmental sales by 38% last year. This is illegal, Linda. You know that." "The decision is final," Linda replied, sliding a manila envelope across the desk. "Your severance package. 2 weeks' pay. Please clean out your desk by the end of the day." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Sarah packed her belongings into a cardboard box. Family photos, her Employee of the Year plaque from last December, the small potted succulent that had survived 3 office moves, artifacts of a career that had defined her identity for years. Her colleagues averted their gazes as she moved through the office, their silence more deafening than any conversation. Just 5 months ago, Sarah had been on top of the world. At 32, she'd finally been promoted to Senior Marketing Director, the youngest in the company's history. Then, Peterson and Associates had been acquired by Dawson Enterprises, a corporate giant known for aggressive restructuring. The new management hadn't even bothered to meet most of the staff before beginning the culling. And now, just as she was building a life for herself and her unborn child, everything was crumbling. The father, a brief relationship that had ended when he learned of the pregnancy, had made it clear he wanted no part in their lives. Her modest savings would barely cover 3 months of rent in the overpriced city apartment. As Sarah placed the last of her belongings in the box, her phone buzzed with a text message from her doctor's office. "Reminder, ultrasound appointment tomorrow, 10 a.m. The irony wasn't lost on her. Tomorrow she would see her baby for the first time, on the first day of her unemployment. "Sarah?" a voice called from behind her. It was James, her closest colleague and friend. "I just heard. This is bullshit." She attempted a smile, but her lips quivered. "It's fine. I'll figure something out." "No, it's not fine," James insisted, lowering his voice as he glanced toward the executive floor. "Everyone knows why they're doing this. Dawson and his team, they're like something out of the last century. Rebecca in accounting was saying that 3 other women have been let go from different branches since the acquisition." Sarah's grip tightened on her box. "It doesn't matter. What am I going to do? Sue them? With what money? What lawyer?" James opened his mouth to respond when the office fell into an unnatural hush. Sarah turned to see what had caused the sudden silence and found herself face to face with a tall figure in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. Maxwell Dawson. The new owner himself had rarely been seen on this floor of the building. Younger than Sarah had expected. Perhaps in his late 30s, with intense blue eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they surveyed. His presence commanded attention without effort. "Ms. Morgan?" His voice was deep, unexpectedly gentle. Sarah straightened her spine, determined not to show weakness. "Yes? Could I see you in my office before you leave?" It wasn't really a question. James shot her a concerned look, but Sarah gave a small nod. "Of course." Whispers trailed in their wake as Sarah followed Maxwell Dawson to the executive elevator. Her mind raced with possibilities. Perhaps HR had complained about her reaction. Maybe he wanted her to sign additional paperwork. Or worst of all, maybe he wanted to personally explain why pregnant women weren't welcome in his corporate empire. The elevator ride to the top floor was silent and tense. Sarah clutched her box of belongings like a shield while Maxwell Dawson stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his expression unreadable. His office occupied the entire corner of the building, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the rain-drenched city. Unlike the previous owner's space, which had been cluttered with golf trophies and family photos, Dawson's office was minimalist, sleek furniture, a few abstract paintings, and a desk clear of everything except a laptop and a single file folder. "Please, sit," he gestured to a chair opposite his desk. Sarah remained standing. "I prefer to keep this brief, Mr. Dawson. It's been a long day." A flicker of something, surprise perhaps, crossed his features before he nodded and moved to sit behind his desk. "I understand. I wanted to speak with you about your termination." "There's nothing to discuss," Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "The paperwork has been processed. I've been informed it's a performance-based decision, though we both know that's not the truth." Maxwell's gaze sharpened. "And what is the truth, Ms. Morgan?" "That I'm being fired because I'm pregnant," she stated bluntly. "That despite my record and contributions to this company, I've been deemed disposable because I'm going to be a mother." She expected denial, perhaps even anger. Instead, Maxwell Dawson leaned back in his chair, studying her with those penetrating eyes. "You're right." The simple admission caught her off guard. "Excuse me?" "You're right," he repeated, opening the file folder on his desk. "Your termination has nothing to do with performance. Your record speaks for itself. Consistently exceptional results, innovative campaigns, strong leadership abilities." He looked up at her. "You're being terminated because Linda Henderson and Regional Director Thomas believe a pregnant woman would be a liability to the department." Sarah blinked, her righteous anger momentarily derailed by his candor. "And you agree with them?" "No," he said simply. "I don't." Rain streaked down the windows behind him as silence filled the room. Sarah shifted the weight of her box, confusion replacing some of her anger. "I don't understand." "I've been observing the operations of this office for 3 weeks," Maxwell explained, rising from his chair, "watching how people work, who leads, who follows, who truly contributes." He walked around to the front of his desk, leaning against it casually. "I've seen how you mentor the junior staff, how you stay late to perfect campaigns that others would have considered good enough, how you diplomatically handle difficult clients." He tapped the file with one finger. "I've also reviewed the company's handling of personnel matters since the acquisition. The pattern of terminations has concerned me." Sarah's arms were beginning to ache from holding the box. Seeing her discomfort, Maxwell gently took it from her and placed it on a nearby table, then guided her to sit in the chair she'd previously refused. "What you don't know," he continued, "is that I only discovered these targeted terminations yesterday. It appears Thomas and Henderson have been making these decisions under the assumption that they were acting according to my wishes." "Weren't they?" Sarah asked, skepticism evident in her voice. "No," Maxwell replied firmly. "My father may have run Dawson Enterprises that way, but I have different values." He turned to look out at the rain-soaked city. "My mother was a single parent. She was fired from her job when her pregnancy began to show. We struggled for years before she built her own successful business." He turned back to face Sarah, his expression softening. "I would never condone what they've done." The revelation hung in the air between them. Sarah searched his face for any sign of deception, but found only sincerity, and something else she couldn't quite identify. "So why am I here?" she finally asked. Maxwell moved back behind his desk and pressed a button on his phone. "Janet, could you please send in Linda Henderson and Director Thomas?" Sarah's heartbeat quickened. Mr. Dawson, Maxwell, please. Maxwell, she amended. What exactly is happening here? Before he could answer, the door opened, and Linda entered alongside Thomas Reed, the regional director who had been conspicuously absent during Sarah's termination. You wanted to see us, Mr. Dawson? Thomas asked, his confident smile faltering when he noticed Sarah. Yes, Maxwell said, his voice taking on a steely edge that hadn't been present when he spoke with Sarah. I wanted to discuss Ms. Morgan's termination. Linda glanced nervously between Sarah and Maxwell. Everything was processed according to protocol. The protocol of firing top-performing employees because they're expecting a child. Maxwell's tone was deceptively calm. That protocol? The color drained from Thomas's face. Sir, we were implementing the streamlining strategy you discussed, eliminating potential complications. Complications, Maxwell repeated, the word dripping with disdain. Is that what we're calling discrimination now? Mr. Dawson, Thomas began, straightening his tie, in acquisitions like these, difficult decisions must be made for the company's long-term benefit. Employees with upcoming extended leaves are protected by law, Maxwell finished for him. Laws that you violated, potentially exposing this company to significant liability. Linda took a step forward. Sir, if I may. You may not, Maxwell cut her off. I've reviewed the personnel files of every employee terminated since the acquisition. 5 pregnant women, all with exemplary records, all allegedly let go for performance reasons. He pointed to the chair next to Sarah. Sit, both of you. They complied immediately. Here's what's going to happen, Maxwell continued, his voice controlled but vibrating with authority. Ms. Morgan's termination is rescinded immediately. She will be reinstated with a promotion to Executive Marketing Director, reporting directly to me. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Furthermore, Maxwell continued, you will identify every employee terminated under similar circumstances and offer them reinstatement with appropriate compensation for the disruption. Thomas cleared his throat. Sir, that's not a suggestion, Maxwell finished. It's a directive, one that you won't be responsible for implementing, as your employment with Dawson Enterprises ends today. The silence that followed was absolute. Linda? Maxwell turned to the HR director, whose face had gone ashen. You have a choice. You can tender your resignation effective immediately, or you can draft a comprehensive anti-discrimination policy for the entire company and personally oversee its implementation. Your decision. Linda's voice was barely audible. I'll draft the policy, sir. Good. Maxwell stood. That will be all for now. After they had left, closing the door behind them, Sarah remained frozen in her seat, trying to process what had just happened. I apologize, Maxwell said quietly, both for what you've experienced and for involving you in that conversation without warning. Sarah found her voice. Why did you do that? He studied her for a moment. Because it was the right thing to do. But there was something in his expression, a warmth in his eyes that suggested there might be more to his decision than professional ethics. The realization sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. Thank you, she said simply, unsure what else to say. Maxwell smiled then, transforming his serious demeanor into something approachable, almost boyish. The promotion is real, by the way. I've been looking for someone to lead our marketing division through the transition. Your record speaks for itself. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept, he replied, and perhaps that you'll join me for dinner tonight to discuss your vision for the department. Sarah hesitated, reading the subtle shift in his expression. This wasn't just a business dinner invitation. Mr. Dawson, Maxwell, I should be clear. I'm pregnant, as you know, and not looking for complications. I know, he said gently, and I'm not offering complications, just dinner, and perhaps a chance to get to know each other better. The rain had stopped, sunlight breaking through the clouds to cast golden light across the city skyline. Sarah found herself smiling for the first time that day. "Dinner would be nice," she said finally. As they arranged the details, Sarah couldn't help but feel that her life had just taken an unexpected turn. What had begun as the worst day of her professional life had somehow transformed into the beginning of something new, something that held possibilities she hadn't dared to imagine. Sarah smoothed the fabric of her navy dress as she sat across from Maxwell at Lumiere, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the intimate space, and the soft sounds of a piano drifted through the room. She'd changed clothes 3 times before settling on this outfit. Professional enough for a business dinner, yet elegant enough for whatever this evening might actually be. "I still can't believe what happened today," she admitted, taking a sip of her sparkling water. "This morning I was employed, then unemployed, then promoted, all within 8 hours. Maxwell smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Not the career trajectory you expected when you woke up?" "Definitely not," she laughed, the tension she'd been carrying beginning to dissolve. "I had rehearsed a whole speech about workplace discrimination on my drive home. Now I don't know what to do with all that righteous indignation." "Save it," Maxwell suggested. "You might need it again someday, preferably when you're arguing on behalf of Dawson Enterprises." The waiter arrived with their appetizers, seared scallops for Maxwell and a delicate mushroom risotto for Sarah. As they began to eat, Sarah studied him surreptitiously. Up close, she noticed details she'd missed in his office. A small scar near his right eyebrow, the way his dark hair curled slightly at his collar, the quiet confidence in his movements. There was something compelling about him beyond his obvious power and position. "So," she ventured, "you mentioned your mother was a single parent. What happened with your father?" A shadow passed over Maxwell's features. "He wasn't in the picture. He was married to someone else when he met my mother. Once he discovered she was pregnant, he disappeared from her life." "I'm sorry," Sarah said softly. "That must have been difficult for both of you." Maxwell's expression softened. "It shaped us, certainly. My mother was remarkable. She worked 3 jobs while getting her business degree, started a small consulting firm from our kitchen table, and somehow still managed to attend every school event." He paused, his voice taking on a distant quality. "She always told me that the measure of a person isn't what they have, but what they do with it." "She sounds amazing," Sarah replied. "Is she still—" "She passed away 5 years ago," Maxwell said, a quiet grief evident in his voice. "Heart failure, but she lived long enough to see her kitchen table business become a regional success and to see me take over my father's company." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Your father's company? Dawson Enterprises was—" "My father's, yes," Maxwell confirmed. "William Dawson. He built an empire while ignoring the fact that he had a son across town who wore second-hand clothes and shared a 1-bedroom apartment with his mother." Sarah leaned forward, intrigued. "How did you end up running his company?" Maxwell's expression was unreadable. "He suffered a stroke 10 years ago. During his recovery, his wife convinced him to reach out and make amends. I think she was more concerned with who would inherit the company than any moral awakening." He swirled the wine in his glass. "By then I had my MBA and was running my mother's company, which had grown considerably. To everyone's surprise, especially mine, he asked me to join Dawson Enterprises." "And you agreed? After everything?" "Not at first," Maxwell admitted. "I refused to even meet with him for months, but my mother convinced me to hear him out." His eyes met Sarah's. "She said holding on to anger would only poison my own life, not his." The waiter cleared their appetizer plates, replacing them with the main course. For a few moments they ate in companionable silence, the revelation of Maxwell's past creating a new understanding between them. "What about you?" Maxwell asked eventually. "You don't wear a ring, but you're expecting a child. If you don't mind my asking?" Sarah took a deep breath. "His name was Daniel. We dated for about 6 months. When I told him I was pregnant, he said he wasn't ready for that responsibility and suggested I take care of it. She kept her tone deliberately neutral, though the memory still stung. When I made it clear that I was keeping the baby, he informed me that he wasn't interested in being a father and hasn't contacted me since. Maxwell's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," Sarah replied with more confidence than she felt. "Better to know who he really was before the baby arrived. Besides, my parents are supportive and I have good friends. We'll be fine." "I have no doubt," Maxwell said, his expression warm. "You strike me as someone who faces challenges head-on." As the evening progressed, their conversation flowed easily from work to personal interests, discovering shared tastes in books and music, debating good-naturedly about films. Sarah found herself laughing more than she had in months, the stress of her pregnancy and career uncertainties temporarily forgotten. Over dessert, a dark chocolate soufflé they agreed to share, Maxwell leaned forward. "I have a confession to make." Sarah's stomach tightened. "Oh? I didn't just call you into my office today on impulse," he admitted. "I'd been planning to speak with you before I heard about the termination." "Why?" Sarah asked, confused. "I've been reviewing the performance records of all departments since the acquisition. Your marketing campaigns consistently outperformed projections. The Westfield campaign in particular caught my attention. Innovative, cost-effective, with remarkable ROI. He smiled slightly. "I wanted to meet the mind behind that work." Sarah felt a flush of pride. The Westfield campaign had been her baby, a risky approach that Thomas had initially opposed. "Thank you. That project meant a lot to me." "It showed," Maxwell replied, "which is why I was already planning to offer you a promotion before today's events." As they finished their dessert, Maxwell's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. "I apologize, but I need to take this. It's the Tokyo office." While he stepped away to take the call, Sarah found herself reflecting on the evening. Whatever she had expected from this dinner, it wasn't this genuine connection. Maxwell Dawson was nothing like the cold corporate titan she had imagined. The man who had shared his past and listened thoughtfully to hers was complex, principled, and unexpectedly vulnerable. And undeniably attractive, a small voice in her head added. She instinctively placed a hand on her stomach, feeling a flutter that might have been the baby or just butterflies from the evening. Complications, she had told him. She wasn't looking for complications. Maxwell returned to the table, slipping his phone back into his pocket. "I apologize for the interruption." "Business doesn't sleep," Sarah replied with a smile, "especially across time zones." "Unfortunately true," he agreed, signaling for the check. "But I've made it a rule not to let work completely hijack my personal time. A lesson learned from watching my father." As they left the restaurant, the night air was crisp and clear after the day's rain. Maxwell's driver waited with the car, but he suggested walking for a bit, and Sarah agreed, grateful for the chance to clear her head. They strolled along the riverfront, the city lights reflecting on the water's surface. Other couples passed them, hand in hand, and Sarah was acutely aware of the space between herself and Maxwell, close enough to feel his presence but careful not to touch. "Thank you for dinner," she said eventually. "It was lovely." "It was," Maxwell agreed, stopping to face her. "Sarah, I want to be clear about something." Her heart skipped a beat. "Yes?" "I'm attracted to you, I think that's obvious. But I also respect your situation and the professional boundaries between us." His eyes were serious in the dim light. "I'm not expecting anything from tonight except the pleasure of your company." Sarah studied him, searching for any hint of insincerity but finding none. "I appreciate that. To be honest, I'm not sure what I'm ready for right now. My life is in transition." "Understandable." He smiled gently. "Perhaps we can agree to get to know each other without pressure. As colleagues, certainly. As friends, hopefully." He paused. "And if something more develops over time, we'll address it then." The proposal was reasonable, mature, and still sent a thrill through her. I'd like that. They walked a bit further before Maxwell's driver brought the car around. As they approached her apartment building, Sarah felt a curious mixture of relief and disappointment that the evening was ending. "Your ultrasound is tomorrow morning, isn't it?" Maxwell asked as the car pulled to a stop. Sarah blinked in surprise. "You remembered that?" "Of course," he replied simply. "It's an important day." "It is," she agreed, touched by his thoughtfulness. "I'm nervous and excited all at once." Maxwell hesitated, then said, "Would you like company? Not in the examination room, obviously, but in the waiting room? Sometimes it helps not to face big moments alone." The offer caught her off guard. It was a significant gesture, one that crossed the boundary from professional to personal, yet it didn't feel inappropriate or presumptuous. Instead, it felt like genuine care. "That would be nice," she found herself saying, "if you can spare the time." "I'll make the time," he assured her. As he walked her to her door, their hands brushed accidentally, sending an unexpected current through her. At her threshold, they paused, the moment heavy with unspoken possibilities. "Good night, Sarah," Maxwell said softly. "I'll see you tomorrow." "Good night," she replied, watching as he returned to the car. Inside her apartment, Sarah kicked off her shoes and sank onto her couch, mind whirling with the day's dramatic turns. 24 hours ago, she had been a mid-level marketing director, pregnant and single, worried about her future. Now she was an executive with a direct line to the CEO who had just taken her to dinner and offered to accompany her to her ultrasound. Her phone buzzed with a text message. "Thank you for a wonderful evening. Looking forward to tomorrow. M." As she prepared for bed, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that her life was veering into uncharted territory. The rational part of her brain warned caution. Maxwell was still her boss, still a man she barely knew, still potentially complicated. Yet another part of her, a part that had been dormant since discovering her pregnancy, whispered of possibilities, of connection, of not having to face everything alone. Tomorrow, she would see her baby for the first time. And somehow the prospect of Maxwell Dawson sitting in the waiting room didn't feel like an intrusion. It felt like support, like the beginning of something undefined but full of promise. Sarah fell asleep with her hand resting on her stomach, dreaming of futures she hadn't dared to imagine. Sarah arrived at the medical center 15 minutes early, her stomach a knot of anticipation. The waiting room was already half full. Other expectant mothers, accompanied by partners who held their hands and flipped through parenting magazines. She signed in at the reception desk and chose a seat near the window, trying not to feel conspicuous in her solitude. She was scrolling through work emails on her phone when a shadow fell across her. Looking up, she found Maxwell standing there, holding 2 paper cups. "Herbal tea," he said, offering one to her. The shop downstairs said it was pregnancy safe. The thoughtfulness of the gesture warmed her. "Thank you. I didn't expect you to actually come. I keep my promises," Maxwell replied simply, taking the seat beside her. He was dressed more casually today, dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that softened his usual corporate appearance. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous," she admitted. "This makes it all more real somehow." A woman across from them smiled sympathetically. "First baby?" Sarah nodded, unconsciously placing a hand on her stomach. "The first time I saw my daughter on the ultrasound, I cried for an hour," the woman confided. "Best feeling in the world." She glanced between Sarah and Maxwell with approval. "You two must be excited." Before Sarah could correct the misunderstanding, the nurse called her name. She rose, suddenly aware of how it would look to clarify, and equally aware that she didn't want to embarrass Maxwell. "Would you like me to wait here?" he asked quietly. Sarah hesitated, then made a decision that surprised her. "Actually, would you mind coming in with me? Just as a friend?" Something flickered in Maxwell's eyes, surprise followed by a deeper emotion she couldn't quite identify. "Of course." The examination room was cool and dimly lit. The technician, A middle-aged woman with kind eyes and efficiency in her movements instructed Sarah to lie back on the padded table and expose her abdomen. "First time, Dad?" she asked Maxwell cheerfully as she prepared the equipment. This time, Sarah did correct her. "Oh, we're not together. He's a friend." The technician's expression didn't change. "That's nice. Support is important." She squirted the cold gel onto Sarah's stomach. "This might be a little uncomfortable, but it warms up quickly." As the woman moved the transducer across her abdomen, Sarah found herself reaching for Maxwell's hand without thinking. He took it gently, his warm grasp steadying her. "There we go," the technician said after a moment, turning the monitor so they could see. "There's your baby." The grainy black-and-white image on the screen was indistinct at first, but as the technician pointed out features, Sarah could make out the curve of a head, the tiny arms and legs, and then, most incredibly, a flickering pulse. "That's the heartbeat," the technician explained. "Strong and regular, exactly what we want to see." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, unexpected emotion constricting her throat. This tiny being inside her was real, living, growing, heart-beating in perfect rhythm. Her child. Maxwell's hand tightened around hers. When she glanced up at him, she was startled to see that his eyes, too, were bright with unshed tears. "Everything looks perfect," the technician continued, taking measurements and recording them. "Based on development, I'd say you're at 17 weeks, which matches your dates. Do you want to know the sex?" Sarah had been undecided until this moment, but suddenly she was certain. "Yes, please." The technician moved the transducer, studying the screen intently. "It's a girl," she announced with a smile. "Congratulations." A daughter. Sarah would have a daughter. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks as the reality sank in. "I'll print some images for you to take home," the technician said, wiping the gel from Sarah's stomach. "The doctor will be in shortly to discuss everything with you." After the technician left, a brief silence fell between them. Maxwell still held her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her skin. "Thank you for being here," Sarah said softly. "Thank you for letting me," he replied, his voice equally quiet. "That was incredible." The rest of the appointment passed in a blur, the doctor confirming that everything was progressing normally, offering advice about nutrition and exercise, scheduling her next visit. Through it all, Maxwell remained a steady presence, asking thoughtful questions that hadn't occurred to Sarah and taking notes when the doctor provided information. Outside the medical center, the spring sun warmed their faces as they stood on the sidewalk, the small envelope of ultrasound images clutched in Sarah's hand like a treasure. "I should get to the office," she said reluctantly, not quite ready for the moment to end. "Take the day," Maxwell suggested. "You've had an emotional morning. The marketing department won't collapse without you for one day." Sarah hesitated. "Are you sure? It's only my second day in the new position." "Completely sure," he assured her. "In fact—" He paused, seeming to consider something. "Do you have any other plans today?" She shook her head. "Just unpacking the box of office belongings I never got around to last night." "Would you consider spending the day with me?" The question was casual, but Sarah sensed the intentionality behind it. "I have something I'd like to show you, something important to me." Curiosity overcame her hesitation. "All right." Maxwell's driver took them across the city to a neighborhood Sarah had never visited, a once industrial area now partially converted to modern lofts and artistic spaces. They stopped in front of a weathered brick building with large steel-framed windows. A simple sign above the entrance read, "New Beginnings." "What is this place?" Sarah asked as they approached the door. "A project my mother started," Maxwell explained, unlocking the entrance. "And one I've continued." Inside, the space opened into a bright, airy environment filled with comfortable furniture, computers, and what appeared to be classrooms along one side. Women of various ages moved about, some with small children, others visibly pregnant. Several looked up as they entered, and Sarah was surprised to see many of them greet Maxwell by name. "Maxwell!" An older woman with silver-streaked black hair approached them, her smile warm. "We weren't expecting you today." "Impromptu visit, Elena," he replied, embracing her briefly. "I wanted to show Sarah what we do here." Turning to Sarah, he explained, "Elena runs the center. She was my mother's best friend and business partner." Elena extended her hand to Sarah. "It's lovely to meet you. Any friend of Maxwell's is welcome here." "New Beginnings is a resource center for single mothers," Maxwell explained as Elena led them through the space. "Job training, childcare, housing assistance, legal aid, whatever they need to build stable lives for themselves and their children." They toured the facility, the computer lab where women learned digital skills, the childcare center where little ones played under watchful supervision, the small legal clinic where an attorney was helping a young mother review paperwork. "My mother started this with her own money," Maxwell said quietly as they watched a cooking class in progress. "She knew firsthand how hard it is to raise a child alone, especially without education or resources. She wanted to create the support system she never had." The pride in his voice was evident, and Sarah found herself deeply moved. This place, with its atmosphere of respect and empowerment, revealed more about Maxwell Dawson than any corporate file or business dinner could have. "After she passed away," he continued, "I took over the funding and expanded the program. We have 3 centers now, with a 4th opening next month." "It's remarkable," Sarah said sincerely. "Truly." Elena, who had given them space to talk, rejoined them with a young woman who couldn't have been more than 20, cradling a newborn. "Maxwell. Tasha wanted to say hello. She just had her baby last week." The young woman smiled shyly. "A boy, 7 pounds, 9 ounces. I named him Leo, after my grandfather." "Congratulations," Maxwell said warmly. "He's beautiful." "I wouldn't have managed without this place," Tasha told Sarah earnestly. "I was living in my car when I found New Beginnings. Now I have my GED, a job starting next month, and an apartment." She looked at Maxwell with naked gratitude. "They saved us." After meeting several more women and touring the rest of the facility, Maxwell and Sarah thanked Elena and returned to the car. Sarah was quiet as they drove, processing what she'd seen. "Why did you show me that?" she asked finally. Maxwell considered the question. "Because I wanted you to understand something about me, about what matters to me." He turned to face her. "When I saw you in that ultrasound room today, watching your daughter's heartbeat, I recognized the look on your face. It's the same expression I've seen hundreds of times at New Beginnings. Love, fear, determination, hope, all mixed together." Sarah felt tears threaten again. "Pregnancy hormones," she told herself, but knew it was more than that. "I know we're just getting to know each other," Maxwell continued, "but I want you to understand that I see you, not just as a talented employee or an attractive woman, but as a mother making her way in a world that doesn't always make that easy." The car pulled up to a small cafe, and they went inside for a late lunch. Over soup and sandwiches, their conversation turned to Sarah's childhood, her parents in Colorado who were excited but concerned about her pregnancy, her college years studying marketing while working retail to pay tuition. "They sound like good people," Maxwell observed when she described her parents. "Will they visit when the baby is born?" "They're planning to come for a few weeks," Sarah confirmed. "My mother has already started knitting a truly alarming number of baby hats." Maxwell laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "You're fortunate to have them." "I know," she agreed. "Not everyone does." She hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind. "Maxwell, why did you really reinstate me yesterday? Was it truly just about doing the right thing?" He set down his water glass, considering her question. "Initially, yes. The discrimination was blatant and wrong." His eyes met hers. But I can't deny that I was already intrigued by your work before I knew about your situation. And now," he paused, "now I find myself intrigued by you." The honesty of his answer created a warm current between them. For a moment, neither spoke, the cafe's ambient noise fading into the background as they studied each other. "I should probably get you home," Maxwell said eventually. "You need rest." Outside her apartment building, he walked her to the door as he had the night before. This time, however, the air between them felt charged with new awareness. "Thank you for today," Sarah said. "For the appointment, for showing me the center, for everything." "I'm glad you agreed to come," Maxwell replied. He hesitated, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers barely grazing her cheek. "I'd like to see you again, outside of work." Sarah knew she should be cautious. Everything was happening so quickly. Her promotion, her pregnancy, this unexpected connection with a man who was still, technically, her boss. Yet she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him, the sense that something significant was unfolding between them. "I'd like that too," she admitted. His smile was worth any risk. "Tomorrow evening? I know a place with the best chocolate cake in the city, and I have a feeling your daughter might appreciate that." Sarah laughed. "How do you know I'm craving chocolate?" "Lucky guess," he replied with a wink. "Until tomorrow, then." As he left, Sarah placed a hand on her stomach, where her daughter, was growing. "What do you think of him?" she whispered. There was no answer, of course, but for the first time since learning of her pregnancy, Sarah felt not just determined or resigned, but genuinely hopeful. She was building a new life, not the one she had planned, but perhaps one even better than she had imagined. Over the next 3 weeks, Sarah's life transformed with dizzying speed. Her new position as executive marketing director came with a corner office, a team of 12, and responsibilities that both challenged and exhilarated her. The first campaign under her leadership, rebranding Dawson Enterprises Charitable Foundation, was already generating positive buzz in the industry. Her expanding role at the company, however, was only one aspect of the change sweeping through her life. The other was Maxwell Dawson himself. Their evening of chocolate cake had led to Sunday brunch, which led to an art exhibition the following weekend, then dinner at his penthouse where he cooked for her, surprisingly well. Each encounter deepened their connection, revealing new layers of compatibility and mutual understanding. Yet Sarah maintained a careful boundary, reminding herself of the complications. He was still her boss. She was still pregnant with another man's child. The situation still carried risks, both professional and personal. "Earth to Sarah." James's voice broke through her thoughts as he placed a coffee mug on her desk. "Regular progress meeting in 30 minutes, and you've been staring at that same spreadsheet for at least 10. Sarah smiled sheepishly. "Sorry, just thinking about the foundation launch." James replied, not bothering to hide his skepticism. "Nothing to do with the fact that the boss has been bringing you lunch every day this week?" Heat rose in Sarah's cheeks. "It's not like that." "Isn't it?" James perched on the edge of her desk. "The entire office is talking, you know. The pregnant princess and the CEO. I heard accounting has a betting pool on when you'll move in together." "That's ridiculous," Sarah protested, though she knew there was truth to his words. The whispers followed her through the halls, the conversations that stopped when she entered conference rooms. "Is it, though?" James asked, his expression softening. "Sarah, I've known you for 3 years. I've never seen you like this. You practically glow when he walks into a room." "That's the pregnancy," she deflected. "That's definitely not just the pregnancy," James countered. "Look, you know I support you. But be careful, okay? Office romances are complicated enough without adding—" He gestured vaguely at her growing baby bump. Sarah sighed. "I know. Believe me, I've thought about all of this. But Maxwell is—" She struggled to find words that wouldn't sound hopelessly naive. "He's different than I expected." "I hope so," James said, standing as his phone buzzed with a reminder. For what it's worth, he seems genuinely smitten, and it's about time you had someone looking at you like that. After James left, Sarah returned to the spreadsheet, but her thoughts drifted back to Maxwell. James was right. There was something undeniable developing between them. Something that made her pulse quicken whenever he texted, something that felt increasingly like the beginning of love. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it filled her with a cautious hope. Her phone vibrated with a message from Maxwell. "Meeting running long. Rain check on lunch, make it up to you with dinner tonight instead." She typed back, "Deal. My place? I'll cook." His response came immediately. "Looking forward to it. Don't work too hard today." Sarah smiled, tucking her phone away. She had a progress meeting to lead, a campaign to launch, and apparently an office betting pool to ignore. Later that afternoon, Sarah was preparing a presentation for the board when Victoria Reed appeared in her doorway. As the head of legal for Dawson Enterprises, Victoria rarely ventured to the marketing floor, making her presence immediately noteworthy. "Ms. Morgan," Victoria said coolly, "do you have a moment?" "Of course," Sarah replied, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "What can I do for you?" Victoria closed the door before taking a seat, her tailored suit and impeccable French twist projecting corporate precision. "I wanted to discuss a delicate matter with you. Privately." Sarah tensed, already anticipating the direction of the conversation. "The company has a policy regarding relationships between employees of different ranks," Victoria began, her tone clinical, "particularly when one party reports directly to the other." "I'm aware of the policy," Sarah replied evenly. "Then you understand my concern," Victoria continued. "Your association with Mr. Dawson has become rather public." Sarah met the other woman's gaze directly. "My personal life is my own, Ms. Reed." "Not when it affects this company," Victoria countered. "There are already whispers about favoritism, about how quickly you were promoted after the acquisition." The implication stung, but Sarah kept her expression neutral. "My promotion was based on my record and abilities, as I'm sure you're aware." "Perhaps," Victoria conceded, "but perception matters in business, and the perception currently is that you've secured your position through personal means." Sarah's patience thinned. "Is there a specific concern you'd like to address, Ms. Reed, or did you simply want to share office gossip?" Victoria's perfectly painted lips tightened. "I'm concerned about potential liability. Workplace relationships that sour can lead to harassment claims, wrongful termination suits." "I have no intention of suing anyone," Sarah interrupted, her tone sharper than intended. "Not now, perhaps," Victoria acknowledged, "but situations change. Emotions complicate matters." She glanced pointedly at Sarah's bump. "Especially with your condition." The condescension in her voice ignited Sarah's anger. "My condition is pregnancy, Ms. Reed, not a terminal illness, and it has no bearing on my professional capabilities or personal decisions." Victoria smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from her skirt. "I'm merely suggesting that you consider the optics of the situation, for your own sake as well as the company's." Before Sarah could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. Maxwell stood in the doorway, his expression shifting from warmth to wariness as he registered Victoria's presence. "Victoria," he said, surprise evident in his voice, "I wasn't aware you had a meeting scheduled with Sarah." "Impromptu discussion," Victoria replied, rising smoothly, "simply clarifying some policy matters." Maxwell's gaze moved between the two women, clearly sensing the tension. "I see. Well, don't let me interrupt." "We were just finishing," Sarah assured him, grateful for the interruption. Victoria nodded curtly. "Indeed. Thank you for your time, Ms. Morgan." To Maxwell, she added, "We should discuss the Peterson acquisition later. There are some contractual concerns." After she left, Maxwell closed the door and turned to Sarah. "What was that about?" Sarah debated downplaying the conversation, but decided honesty was better. She was expressing concerns about our relationship. Apparently, it's creating perception issues. Maxwell's expression darkened. Victoria oversteps sometimes. I apologize if she made you uncomfortable. It's fine, Sarah said, though her lingering irritation suggested otherwise. She's just doing her job, I suppose. Her job is to address legal matters, not police personal relationships, Maxwell countered. He crossed to the window, his posture tense. This isn't the first time she's involved herself in my personal affairs. Something in his tone caught Sarah's attention. What do you mean? Maxwell hesitated, then sighed. Victoria was my father's attorney before she worked for the company. She handled his will, his estate planning, and apparently she feels that gives her license to monitor my life choices. She seems very protective of you, Sarah observed carefully. A humorless laugh escaped him. Not of me, of the Dawson legacy. Victoria was instrumental in orchestrating my father's outreach after his stroke. I suspect she hoped I'd be an obedient figurehead while she maintained actual control. And instead, you took genuine leadership, Sarah concluded, which explains her attitude. Likely, Maxwell agreed, turning back to face her. But that doesn't excuse her approaching you this way. Sarah rose, moving to stand beside him at the window. It's okay. Office gossip is inevitable. I knew that going in. Maxwell's expression softened as he looked at her. Does it bother you? The talk? Sometimes, she admitted. Not because I'm ashamed of whatever this is between us, but because I've worked hard to be taken seriously. I don't want people thinking I've advanced because of anything other than merit. No one who works with you could think that, Maxwell said firmly. Your talent speaks for itself. She smiled, grateful for his understanding. I should probably get back to work. Dinner tonight is still on? Absolutely, he confirmed. 7 o'clock? After he left, Sarah tried to refocus on her presentation, but Victoria's words lingered. Despite Maxwell's reassurance, she knew the attorney had raised valid concerns. Office relationships were complicated, especially when one person owned the company and the other was 5 months pregnant. That evening, as Sarah prepared dinner in her apartment, these thoughts continued to nag at her. She was chopping vegetables when a knock announced Maxwell's arrival precisely at 7. He entered carrying a bouquet of lilies and a small gift bag. Something smells amazing. Chicken parmigiana, she replied, accepting the flowers with a smile. And what's this? Open it, he encouraged, hanging his jacket by the door. Inside the bag, Sarah found a beautiful leather-bound journal with her initials embossed on the cover. It's lovely, she said, running her fingers over the soft material. I thought you might want to document your pregnancy, Maxwell explained. Thoughts, milestones, letters to your daughter. The thoughtfulness of the gift touched her deeply. That's perfect. Thank you. As they prepared dinner together, moving around her small kitchen with unexpected synchronicity, Sarah found herself studying him, the way he rolled up his sleeves to help with the salad, how he remembered where she kept the plates after just one previous visit, the gentle way he inquired about her day. Over dinner, they discussed the Foundation launch, a book they'd both recently read, and plans for the upcoming weekend. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and moments of comfortable silence. It felt natural. It felt right. After they'd cleared the plates, Maxwell suggested they move to the couch. There's something I'd like to discuss with you, he said, his tone suddenly serious. Sarah's stomach tightened as she sat beside him. That sounds ominous. Not at all, he assured her, taking her hand. I've been thinking about what happened today with Victoria, and about the situation at the office in general. Oh? Sarah tried to keep her voice neutral. I care about you, Sarah, Maxwell said directly. I think that's fairly obvious by now, and I believe you care about me too. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. but I also understand your concerns about perception, about your professional reputation." He squeezed her hand gently. "I don't want to complicate your life or undermine your standing at the company." Sarah's heart sank. Was he ending things before they'd truly begun? "So I have a proposal," Maxwell continued. "One that might address both our personal feelings and the professional considerations." "I'm listening," she said cautiously. "I'd like to continue seeing you, getting to know you better, exploring what's developing between us," he said. "But I'd also like to make a change to the reporting structure at Dawson Enterprises. Effective immediately, you would report to the COO, Martin Chen, rather than directly to me." Sarah blinked, processing his suggestion. "You'd change the corporate structure? For this?" "For us," he corrected gently. "It's a small adjustment administratively, but it removes the direct supervisory relationship that creates the most significant ethical concern. Your position, responsibilities, and compensation would remain exactly the same." The practical solution surprised her. "You've given this a lot of thought." "I have," Maxwell acknowledged, "because what's happening between us matters to me. You matter to me." His gaze was steady, sincere. "I want to do this right, Sarah." The weight of his words settled between them. This wasn't casual interest or fleeting attraction. This was a man making space in his life, in his company, for her and her unborn child. "Maxwell," she began, her voice soft. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything right now," he assured her. "Think about it. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it." In the silence that followed, Sarah found herself confronting the truth she'd been dancing around for weeks. Despite her caution, despite the complications, she was falling in love with Maxwell Dawson. The realization both terrified and exhilarated her. "I don't need to think about it," she said finally. "I want this too, whatever this is becoming." Relief and joy transformed his expression. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, Maxwell leaned forward. Their lips met in a first kiss that was gentle, questioning, then deepening as Sarah responded, her hand coming up to rest against his cheek. When they finally parted, his forehead resting against hers, Sarah felt a flutter in her abdomen, her daughter moving, as if offering her own approval of this new development. "She kicked," Sarah whispered, taking Maxwell's hand and placing it where her daughter continued to make her presence known. His eyes widened in wonder as he felt the movement beneath his palm. "Hello there, little one," he murmured. In that moment, as Maxwell marveled at the life growing within her, Sarah knew they were crossing a threshold. Whatever came next, office gossip, Victoria's disapproval, the challenges of building a relationship while preparing for motherhood, they would face it together. And somehow, that made everything less frightening and more possible than she had ever imagined. By Sarah's 7th month of pregnancy, summer had draped the city in golden warmth. Her baby bump was now unmistakable, drawing smiles from strangers and unsolicited advice from well-meaning colleagues. The marketing department's foundation launch had been a resounding success, earning praise from the board and industry recognition that solidified her professional standing. Her personal life had blossomed alongside her career. After the reporting structure change, her relationship with Maxwell had grown steadily, deepening with each passing week. They hadn't made any grand announcements, but neither did they hide their connection. They were simply together, navigating this unexpected path with mutual respect and growing affection. On a particularly beautiful Saturday morning, Sarah was putting the finishing touches on the nursery, a sunny room in her apartment that Maxwell had helped her paint a soft mint green. She was arranging books on the small white bookshelf when her phone rang. "How's the nesting going?" Maxwell asked when she answered, the smile evident in his voice. "Predictably obsessive," Sarah admitted, surveying the meticulously organized space. "I've alphabetized the board books, twice." Maxwell laughed. "That sounds about right. I'm just finishing up at the office and thought I'd bring lunch. Preferences?" Anything with pickles? She replied immediately. Your daughter's cravings are very specific today. Noted. See you in an hour? After they hung up, Sarah continued preparing the nursery, her thoughts drifting to the changes in her life. 6 months ago, she had been facing single motherhood with determination, but trepidation. Now, while still officially single, she was far from alone. Maxwell had become an integral part of her pregnancy journey, attending doctor's appointments, helping select baby furniture, reading parenting books alongside her. He'd even enrolled them in a birthing class where he'd gamely practiced breathing techniques and supportive positions, undeterred by being the only non-biological father in the room. Their relationship had a natural ease that surprised her. For all his wealth and power, Maxwell was remarkably down-to-earth in private, content with takeout and movie nights, passionate about obscure documentaries, endearingly competitive at board games. He listened when she spoke, remembered details she mentioned in passing, and seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and feelings. The sound of keys in the lock pulled Sarah from her reverie. Maxwell had a key to her apartment now, a practical decision initially, so he could let in the furniture delivery people when she had a doctor's appointment. But the casual domesticity of it, the way he called out, "It's me," as he entered, sent a warm current through her chest. He appeared in the nursery doorway holding 2 takeout bags. Pickles as requested, along with every conceivable sandwich topping. Sarah crossed to him, rising on tiptoes to kiss him hello. "You're perfect." "I try," he replied with mock modesty, then surveyed the room. "The bookshelf looks great. This place is really coming together." They ate lunch at Sarah's small kitchen table, discussing the upcoming week, her prenatal appointment, his business trip to Chicago, a benefit gala they'd been invited to attend together. 2 days in Chicago will feel like an eternity, Maxwell confessed as they cleaned up. "I've gotten used to seeing you every day." Sarah smiled, touched by the admission. "It's only 48 hours. We'll survive." "I know," he agreed, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hands resting gently on her rounded belly. "But I'll miss you both." The casual intimacy of the moment, the easy inclusion of her unborn daughter in his affection, made Sarah's heart swell. They hadn't discussed the future explicitly, what role Maxwell might play in her daughter's life, what their relationship might evolve into, but in moments like these, she allowed herself to hope for permanence. After lunch, they walked to a nearby park, enjoying the summer sunshine. Maxwell held her hand as they strolled along the tree-lined paths, occasionally stopping to rest on a bench when Sarah needed a break. "I've been thinking," Maxwell said as they watched children playing on a colorful playground. "About your apartment." "What about it?" Sarah asked, curious about his thoughtful expression. "It's perfect for one person, maybe even for a mother and infant initially," he began carefully. "But babies grow quickly, and that second bedroom is quite small for a nursery." Sarah tilted her head. "Are you criticizing my apartment, Dawson?" "Not at all," he assured her, "just considering practicalities." She had a feeling she knew where this was heading but wanted him to say it. "And what practicalities have you been considering?" Maxwell turned to face her fully. "I have a penthouse with 4 bedrooms and a dedicated playroom from when my sister's children visit. It has security, excellent schools nearby, and is 10 minutes closer to the office." His eyes held hers. "I'd like you to consider moving in with me, you and your daughter." Though she'd suspected this was coming, the actual proposal still took her breath away. "Maxwell, that's a big step." "I know," he acknowledged, "and I'm not asking for an immediate answer, but I want you to know that the option is there." He squeezed her hand gently. "I love having you in my life, Sarah, both of you." The word love hung in the air between them, implied but not directly stated. Neither had said it yet, though Sarah had felt it growing inside her for weeks. "I'll think about it," she promised, resting her head on his shoulder. They continued their walk, the conversation shifting to lighter topics, but the question lingered in Sarah's mind. Moving in together would fundamentally change their relationship, making it more permanent, more family-like. It was both appealing and intimidating. Monday morning found Sarah back in her office reviewing quarterly projections with James. The change in reporting structure meant they now presented directly to Martin Chen, the COO, though Maxwell still took a keen interest in their department's work. "These numbers are solid," James commented, scrolling through the document. "Martin will be pleased." Sarah nodded, making a note on her tablet. "The digital campaign outperformed our estimates by 17%. That's worth highlighting." "Agreed." James closed the laptop and leaned back in his chair. "So, speaking of highlights, any developments on the home front? The betting pool on when you'll move in with the boss has reached 4 figures. Sarah rolled her eyes. "You people need healthier hobbies." "Don't deflect," James pressed with a grin. "Inquiring minds want to know." "He asked me yesterday," Sarah admitted, unable to keep the news to herself any longer. "To move in with him, I mean." James's eyebrows shot up. "And? What did you say?" "That I'd think about it." She fiddled with her pen. "It's complicated, James. Everything's happened so quickly." "Love usually does," he replied simply. The word made her pause. "I didn't say anything about love." "You didn't have to," James said, his expression softening. "It's written all over your face whenever he walks into a room, and his, for that matter." Before Sarah could respond, her assistant knocked on the door. "Ms. Morgan, Ms. Reed is here to see you." Victoria Reed entered before Sarah could reply, her cool efficiency filling the room. "Ms. Morgan, Mr. Keller, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "Just reviewing projections," Sarah replied evenly. "What can I do for you, Ms. Reed?" Victoria placed a folder on the desk. "Legal needs your signature on the foundation launch documents. Standard release forms for the participant testimonials." As Sarah reviewed the papers, Victoria continued, "I understand congratulations may be in order. Word is that you'll be moving into Mr. Dawson's residence." The pointed comment made Sarah glance up sharply. "Office gossip travels quickly." "Indeed," Victoria agreed with a thin smile, "especially when it involves the CEO and an employee." James cleared his throat awkwardly. "I should check on the creative team's progress. Excuse me." He slipped out, closing the door behind him. Once they were alone, Victoria's professional veneer slipped slightly. "I had hoped our previous conversation might have inspired more discretion." "My personal life remains my own, Ms. Reed," Sarah replied calmly. "And as you're well aware, the reporting structure has been adjusted to address any professional concerns." "A convenient adjustment," Victoria noted, her tone implying something less than ethical. "Tell me, Ms. Morgan, what exactly are your intentions regarding Maxwell?" The directness of the question caught Sarah off guard. "My intentions?" "Yes." Victoria crossed her arms. "Maxwell Dawson is not just a wealthy man. He's the heir to a corporate legacy that spans generations. His personal choices have far-reaching implications." Sarah felt her temper rising but kept her voice measured. "I'm aware of who Maxwell is, and I assure you my intentions are to build a genuine relationship based on mutual respect and affection." Victoria's expression remained skeptical. "A convenient position given your current circumstances." Her gaze flicked meaningfully to Sarah's prominent baby bump. The implication was unmistakable, and this time, Sarah couldn't contain her anger. "Are you suggesting that I'm using my pregnancy to trap Maxwell? That I'm somehow manipulating him for financial gain?" "I'm merely pointing out that your situation, single, pregnant, with limited financial resources, makes Maxwell's wealth and stability particularly appealing," Victoria replied coldly. "It wouldn't be the first time a man in his position was targeted in such a manner." Sarah stood, pregnancy hormones and genuine outrage combining dangerously. "I think you should leave, Ms. Reed. Before I say something we'll both regret." Victoria remained unruffled. "Consider this friendly advice, Ms. Morgan. Maxwell may be infatuated now, but he will eventually recognize the incongruity of your relationship. When that happens, That's enough, Victoria." Maxwell's voice cut through the room like ice. Neither woman had heard him enter. He stood in the doorway, his expression thunderous as he regarded his legal counsel. "Maxwell," Victoria began, her tone shifting immediately. "I was just discussing some legal matters with Ms. Morgan." "Were you?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Because from what I heard, you were making highly inappropriate insinuations about her character and our relationship." Victoria straightened her spine. "As head of legal, it's my responsibility to protect the company's interests." "Your responsibility," Maxwell interrupted, "is to provide legal counsel when requested, not to insert yourself into my personal life or harass my employees." He moved to stand beside Sarah. "I think we need to clarify your role at Dawson Enterprises. My office. Now." The tension in the room was palpable as Victoria gathered her papers, her composure finally cracking to reveal genuine alarm. "Maxwell, you're not thinking clearly. I've always had your best interests." "My best interests," he said firmly, "include Sarah and her daughter. That is non-negotiable." He gestured to the door. "My office, Victoria. I won't ask again." After Victoria departed, Maxwell turned to Sarah, his anger melting into concern. "Are you all right? I heard enough to gather the gist of her friendly advice." Sarah sank back into her chair, the adrenaline of the confrontation leaving her shaky. "I'm fine, just blindsided. Does she really think I'm some gold digger using pregnancy to trap a wealthy man?" "Victoria sees threats everywhere," Maxwell sighed, perching on the edge of her desk. "She's been my father's attack dog for so long, she's forgotten how to discern actual threats from imagined ones." Sarah looked up at him, a new worry forming. "Will she make trouble for you? Professionally, I mean?" "Let me worry about Victoria," he said, then gentled his tone. "I'm more concerned about you." What she said was inexcusable. "It was," Sarah agreed, "but not entirely surprising. I'm sure others have thought the same thing." Maxwell took her hands in his. "Then they don't know you, or us." He paused, seeming to make a decision. "Sarah, I know I've asked a lot lately. Moving in together is a significant step, but I want you to know that I'm not just offering shared living space." Her heart quickened at his serious tone. "What are you offering?" "A future," he said simply. "I love you, Sarah. I think I've loved you since I saw you holding that box of office supplies, refusing to back down even when you thought your career was over." The declaration, spoken so plainly, brought tears to her eyes. "Maxwell?" "You don't need to say it back," he assured her quickly. "I know things have moved fast, and with the baby coming, there's a lot to process. I just wanted you to know where I stand, regardless of what Victoria or anyone else might think." Sarah reached up to touch his face, her palm against his cheek. "I love you too," she said softly. "I think I have for a while now." The joy that transformed his expression was breathtaking. He leaned down to kiss her, a gentle, reverent kiss that spoke of futures and possibilities neither had imagined just months before. When they parted, Sarah smiled through happy tears. "So, about that penthouse with the dedicated playroom." Maxwell laughed, the sound full of relief and happiness. "Is that a yes?" "It's a yes," she confirmed, "for both of us." As they embraced, Sarah knew there would be more challenges ahead. Victoria's disapproval, the continued office gossip, the complexity of building a family with a man she was still getting to know while preparing to welcome a child fathered by someone else. But for the first time, those challenges didn't seem insurmountable. They seemed like stepping stones on a path that, while unexpected, felt increasingly right. Moving day arrived the following weekend. Sarah stood in her half-empty apartment, surrounded by labeled boxes and memories of the life she'd built for herself over the past 3 years. It was strange how a space that had once felt like her sanctuary now seemed so transitory, a way station rather than a destination. "That's the last of the kitchen boxes," Maxwell announced, entering from the hallway. The movers say they'll be finished loading within the hour. Sarah nodded, running her hand along the back of her couch, one of the few pieces of furniture she was keeping. Most of her things were being donated, replaced by the high-end furnishings in Maxwell's penthouse. Their penthouse now, she reminded herself. "Having second thoughts?" Maxwell asked gently, noticing her pensive expression. "Not second thoughts," she assured him. "Just acknowledging the change. This was my first place that was truly mine, you know? Not a dorm room or shared apartment." Maxwell wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "I understand. We can keep as much of your furniture as you want. The penthouse is your home now, too. It should reflect that." Sarah leaned into him, grateful for his sensitivity. "The couch stays, and my reading chair. The rest can go to the Women's Center." New beginnings had become a regular part of their lives over the past months. Sarah had begun volunteering her marketing expertise to help the women there develop professional skills, finding unexpected fulfillment in mentoring others facing challenges similar to her own. "Deal," Maxwell agreed, kissing the top of her head. "Ready to see your daughter's new nursery? The decorators finished yesterday, but I waited so we could see it together." The nursery had been the one room in the penthouse Sarah hadn't yet seen. Maxwell had insisted on keeping it as a surprise, working with designers to create a special space for the baby. 3 hours later, Sarah stood in the doorway of that nursery, tears streaming down her face. The room was beyond anything she could have imagined, a magical space with hand-painted clouds drifting across pale blue walls, built-in bookshelves filled with children's classics, and a reading nook with a cushioned window seat overlooking the city. The furniture was exquisite, a cherry wood crib with delicate carvings, a matching changing table, and a rocking chair that looked antique but was perfectly comfortable. "Maxwell," she breathed, taking it all in, "this is incredible." "Do you like it?" he asked, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "If anything doesn't feel right, we can change it." Sarah turned to him, overwhelmed by the thought and care evident in every detail. "It's perfect, absolutely perfect." "There's one more thing," Maxwell said, crossing to a small cabinet near the crib. He opened it to reveal a state-of-the-art sound system. It's programmed with classical music, nature sounds, and... He pressed a button, and a woman's voice filled the room, soft and melodic, reading a children's story. "Is that—" Sarah began, recognizing the voice. "Your mother," Maxwell confirmed. "I asked her to record some of your favorite childhood books when she visited last month. There are hours of stories, all ready for your daughter whenever she needs her grandmother's voice." The thoughtfulness of the gesture broke something open inside Sarah. She sank into the rocking chair, one hand on her belly as she wept, not from hormones or sadness, but from the sheer abundance of love surrounding her child. Maxwell knelt beside her, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "I hope those are happy tears." "The happiest," she managed, reaching for his hand. "I don't know what I did to deserve you." "You're you," he said simply. "That's more than enough." The weeks that followed were a period of adjustment as Sarah settled into life at the penthouse. Maxwell's home was undeniably luxurious. The sweeping views, the gourmet kitchen, the private elevator, but it was the smaller details that required the most adaptation. The housekeeper who arrived each morning, the personal chef who prepared meals that could be reheated when they worked late, the security team that discreetly monitored the building, these were aspects of wealth that Sarah had never experienced. "I feel strange having someone clean up after me," she confessed one evening as they prepared for bed. "Like I'm taking advantage." Maxwell looked up from his book. "Mrs. Chen has worked for me for 7 years. She's paid exceptionally well, has full benefits, and sets her own hours. I believe in compensating people fairly for their work, not exploiting them." "I know," Sarah sighed, settling into bed beside him. "I'm just not used to it. I've always done everything myself." Maxwell set his book aside, turning to face her. "Is that what's been bothering you this week? The staff?" Sarah hesitated, trying to articulate the vague discomfort she'd been feeling. Partly, it's also, I don't want to lose myself in your world, Maxwell. I don't want to become one of those women who exists solely in relation to her wealthy partner, who has no identity outside of that relationship. Understanding dawned in his eyes. You're worried about maintaining your independence. Yes, she admitted. I love you and I'm grateful for everything you've done for us, but I need to contribute, to pull my own weight. You do, Maxwell assured her, every day, at work and at home. He took her hand, his expression serious. But I understand what you're saying. What would make you more comfortable? Sarah had given this thought. I'd like to pay for some things. Not half, I know that's not realistic with the income disparity, but something meaningful. And I'd like some spaces that are mine to maintain, like the nursery. Maxwell nodded. That seems reasonable. We can work out the financial details however you'd like. He paused, then added, I never want you to feel like a guest in our home, Sarah. I want you to feel like it belongs to you as much as it does to me. Our home, she repeated, testing the words. I like the sound of that. He leaned forward to kiss her, his hand coming to rest on her belly where their daughter, she had begun to think of the baby as theirs, not just hers, kicked in apparent agreement. At the office, news of their cohabitation had spread quickly, fueling fresh rounds of gossip. Most colleagues were supportive, offering congratulations with varying degrees of sincerity. A few, particularly those allied with Victoria, were noticeably cooler, their smiles not reaching their eyes. Victoria herself had been conspicuously absent from Sarah's professional orbit since her confrontation with Maxwell. Rumors suggested she had been reprimanded and her role significantly reduced, though she remained with the company. Sarah occasionally caught sight of her in the executive wing, her expression inscrutable whenever their paths crossed. 8 months into her pregnancy, Sarah was reviewing the quarterly marketing budget when a sharp pain lanced through her abdomen. She gasped, clutching the edge of her desk as the sensation intensified, then gradually subsided. James, who had been presenting campaign ideas, was immediately at her side. Sarah? What's wrong? I don't know, she admitted, breathing carefully as the pain receded. It felt like a contraction, but it's too early. I'm calling Maxwell, James decided, reaching for his phone. No, wait, Sarah protested. It's probably just Braxton Hicks, false contractions. The doctor said they're normal at this stage. As if to contradict her, another wave of pain surged through her, stronger than before. Sarah couldn't suppress a moan, her hands instinctively cradling her belly. That's it, James declared, already dialing. We're getting you to the hospital. Events moved quickly after that. Maxwell arrived in minutes, his face pale with concern. The company doctor examined Sarah in the executive lounge, her expression grave as she checked Sarah's blood pressure. It's preeclampsia, she explained. Your blood pressure is dangerously high and the contractions suggest your body is preparing for premature labor. We need to get you to the hospital immediately. In the ambulance, Maxwell held Sarah's hand, his voice steady despite the fear evident in his eyes. Everything's going to be fine. You're both going to be fine. Sarah tried to believe him, but the rapid movements of the medical team, the urgency in their voices as they administered medication to slow the contractions, told a different story. This was serious, potentially life-threatening for both her and her baby. At the hospital, she was rushed to the high-risk obstetrics unit. A team of specialists converged around her, attaching monitors, inserting IVs, asking rapid-fire questions about her medical history. Maxwell, she gasped between contractions, clinging to his hand. If something happens, nothing's going to happen, he insisted fiercely. I won't allow it. The next few hours passed in a blur of pain, fear, and medical interventions. The doctors managed to stabilize Sarah's blood pressure and halt the contractions, but she remained in critical condition. Her daughter, while still safely in utero, showed signs of distress on the monitors. We're going to keep you here for observation, the lead obstetrician explained. Best case scenario, we can maintain the pregnancy for another week or two, giving the baby's lungs more time to develop. But we need to be prepared for an emergency C-section if your condition deteriorates or the baby shows increased distress. After the medical team left, Maxwell pulled a chair close to Sarah's bed, his expression haunted. "I've never been so scared," he admitted quietly. "When James called, when I saw you in pain—" Sarah reached for his hand, her own fear momentarily overshadowed by the need to comfort him. "We're going to be okay. Both of us." "I know," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I've arranged for the best specialists to consult on your case. Whatever you need, the most advanced treatments, experimental therapies, anything, it's yours." Sarah smiled weakly. "Money can't fix everything, Maxwell." "No," he agreed, "but it can ensure you have every possible advantage." He leaned forward, pressing his forehead against their clasped hands. "I can't lose you, Sarah. Either of you." The raw emotion in his voice brought tears to her eyes. "You won't." For the next 3 days, Sarah remained in the hospital under constant monitoring. Maxwell rarely left her side, working remotely from a makeshift office in her private room, sleeping in a recliner beside her bed. Her parents flew in from Colorado, providing additional support and comfort. On the 4th morning, Sarah woke to find Maxwell standing by the window, his phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, but his tense posture suggested the conversation was difficult. "I don't care about the merger," she heard him say. "Postpone the meetings. No, I won't be there, because my family needs me here." Family. The word warmed Sarah even as she worried about the professional consequences of his extended absence. Dawson Enterprises was in the midst of acquiring a major competitor, a deal Maxwell had been orchestrating for months. His presence at the negotiations was presumably crucial. When he ended the call and turned, she pretended to be just waking. "Morning," she murmured. His expression softened instantly. "Good morning. How are you feeling?" "Better," she said truthfully. The medication had stabilized her condition, and the constant rest had helped reduce her blood pressure. "Any updates from the doctors?" "They'll be in soon for morning rounds," Maxwell replied, moving to sit beside her. "Your numbers looked good overnight. The baby's heart rate has stabilized too." Sarah took his hand. "I heard your call. The merger is less important than you and our daughter," he finished firmly. "Our daughter." He had begun using the phrase more frequently, his initial caution about overstepping gradually replaced by open commitment to the child. Sarah found that she welcomed it, welcomed the shared responsibility, the implicit promise of a future together. "Still," she pressed gently, "I know how important this deal is. If you need to go—" "I don't," Maxwell insisted. "Martin can handle the preliminary negotiations. The board understands the situation." Sarah wasn't entirely convinced, but his determination was clear. Before she could respond, the door opened to admit her medical team, led by Dr. Patel, the maternal-fetal medicine specialist. "Good news, Ms. Morgan," Dr. Patel announced after examining Sarah and reviewing her charts. "Your condition has stabilized enough that we're cautiously optimistic. If your improvement continues, we might be able to discharge you for bed rest at home within a few days." The relief that flooded through Sarah was palpable. "And the baby?" "Her vitals have improved significantly," Dr. Patel confirmed. "We'll continue monitoring closely, but the immediate danger appears to have passed." After the medical team departed, Maxwell pulled Sarah into a gentle embrace, mindful of her IV lines. "Thank God," he whispered against her hair. Sarah clung to him, her tears dampening his shirt. "I was so scared." "Me too," he admitted. "But you're both fighters." He pulled back to look at her, his expression suddenly serious. "Sarah, these past few days have made me realize something." "What's that?" she asked, wiping away her tears. Maxwell took a deep breath. "That I don't want to waste any more time." When you're discharged, when you're both safe and healthy at home, I want to make our family official." His eyes held hers steadily. "I want to marry you, Sarah, if you'll have me." The unexpected proposal hung in the air between them. Sarah studied his face, seeing not just the wealthy CEO or the attentive partner, but the man who had remained by her side through the most frightening days of her life, who had called her and her unborn child his family without hesitation or qualification. Before she could respond, a contraction seized her, more powerful than any before. The monitors beside her bed erupted in urgent beeping as her blood pressure spiked dangerously. "Maxwell," she gasped, clutching her belly, "something's wrong." The room suddenly filled with medical personnel, their voices tense as they assessed her rapidly deteriorating condition. Through the haze of pain, Sarah heard fragments of urgent conversation. "Placental abruption, fetal distress, prepare for emergency C-section." Maxwell's face, white with fear, was the last thing she saw before they wheeled her toward the operating room, his proposal still unanswered as darkness claimed her consciousness. The first thing Sarah became aware of was the steady beeping of machines. Then came the pain, a dull, throbbing sensation across her abdomen. Her eyes fluttered open to a dimly lit hospital room, the digital clock on the wall reading 3:17 a.m. Maxwell was asleep in a chair beside her bed, his hand still holding hers, his face creased with exhaustion even in slumber. The events before she lost consciousness came rushing back, the sudden pain, the medical team's urgent voices, being wheeled away for an emergency C-section. Her baby. Where was her baby? Panic surged through her as she tried to sit up, the movement sending sharp pain through her surgical incision. The monitor beside her bed registered her distress, its beeping increasing in tempo. Maxwell jerked awake immediately. "Sarah, you're awake?" Relief flooded his face. "Thank God." "The baby," she whispered, her throat dry and scratchy. "Is she—" "She's alive," Maxwell assured her quickly, reaching for a cup of water with a straw. "She's in the NICU. 4 pounds, 3 ounces. The doctors say she's fighting hard." Sarah sipped the water gratefully, processing his words. Their daughter was premature, but alive. "Have you seen her?" Maxwell nodded, his eyes filling with tears. "She's beautiful, Sarah. So small but perfect. She has your nose." His voice caught. "And your determination." "I need to see her," Sarah insisted, trying again to sit up. "Soon," Maxwell promised, gently restraining her. "But you need to recover first. The surgery was complicated." Something in his tone made Sarah's heart constrict. "What aren't you telling me?" Maxwell swallowed hard, his expression grave. "There was significant hemorrhaging during the procedure. They had to perform an emergency hysterectomy to save your life." The words hung in the air, their implications slowly penetrating Sarah's fog of pain and medication. A hysterectomy. She would never have another child. "I'm so sorry," Maxwell whispered, squeezing her hand. "The doctors said there was no alternative. You were losing too much blood too quickly." Sarah closed her eyes, tears seeping from beneath her lids. She hadn't planned on having more children, at least not in the immediate future. But having the choice permanently removed was a loss she hadn't anticipated. "You almost died," Maxwell continued, his voice breaking. "When they took you into surgery, they wouldn't tell me anything for hours. I thought I'd lost you both." The raw pain in his voice pulled Sarah from her own grief. She opened her eyes to find him weeping openly, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "Hey," she whispered, squeezing his hand. "I'm still here. We both are." Maxwell nodded, struggling to compose himself. "The doctor said you should be able to see her tomorrow if your condition remains stable." "What's her name?" Sarah asked suddenly, realizing they had never officially decided. They had discussed options, narrowing down a list of favorites, but had planned to make the final decision after seeing her. "I didn't want to name her without you," Maxwell said. "She's listed as Baby Girl Morgan, for now." Despite everything, Sarah smiled. "Not Baby Girl Dawson?" "She's your daughter," Maxwell replied simply. "Legally, at least for now." The reminder of his proposal, interrupted by the medical emergency, hung between them. Sarah was too exhausted, too overwhelmed by all that had happened to address it now. Instead, she asked, "Tell me more about her. What does she look like?" Maxwell's expression softened as he described their daughter. The wisp of dark hair, the tiny fingers that had gripped his when he'd been allowed to touch her through the incubator's ports. How the nurses said she was surprisingly strong for her size. Sarah drifted back to sleep with these images in her mind. Maxwell's voice a comforting anchor in the darkness. The next day brought a parade of doctors, each explaining different aspects of Sarah's condition and recovery. The obstetrician detailed the placental abruption that had necessitated the emergency surgery. The neonatologist provided updates on the baby, who was stable but would need to remain in the NICU for several weeks. The surgeon who had performed the hysterectomy explained the procedure and what Sarah could expect during recovery. Through it all, Maxwell remained by her side, asking pertinent questions, taking notes, and ensuring Sarah understood everything. When the medical team finally cleared her to visit the NICU, he insisted on a wheelchair rather than the gurney the nurses had suggested, knowing Sarah would want to feel less like a patient. "Ready?" he asked as they approached the NICU entrance. Sarah nodded, her heart pounding. The nurse helped them scrub in and don sterile gowns before wheeling Sarah into the unit. The room was filled with incubators and monitoring equipment, quiet except for the gentle beeping of machines and the occasional murmur of medical staff. In the far corner, a small incubator bore a sign reading, "Baby Girl Morgan." As they approached, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Inside the clear chamber, connected to various tubes and monitors, lay a tiny being with skin so translucent she could see the blue veins beneath. "Oh," Sarah breathed, tears filling her eyes. "She's so small." "You can touch her," the NICU nurse encouraged, showing Sarah how to reach through the porthole in the side of the incubator. With trembling fingers, Sarah stroked her daughter's arm, marveling at the softness of her skin. The baby stirred slightly at her touch, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. "Hello, little one," Sarah whispered. "I'm your mom." Maxwell stood behind her, one hand on Sarah's shoulder, the other reaching into the incubator to gently touch the baby's foot. "We've been waiting to meet you." In that moment, as they both connected with their daughter for the first time, something solidified between them, a bond that transcended romance or partnership. They were a family, joined by this fragile life they had both already fought to protect. "Lily," Sarah said suddenly, looking up at Maxwell. "I think her name is Lily." Maxwell smiled, his eyes never leaving the baby. "Lily Morgan Dawson," he said softly. "It's perfect." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of hospital rooms, medical updates, and precious moments with Lily. Sarah's recovery progressed well, though the physical and emotional toll of the surgery left her exhausted. Maxwell divided his time between Sarah's room, the NICU, and the minimal work he couldn't delegate, often sleeping in the hospital rather than returning to the penthouse. Sarah's parents remained in the city, providing additional support and taking shifts at the NICU, so that neither Lily nor Sarah was ever alone. Even James visited regularly, bringing updates from the office and small gifts for both Sarah and the baby. Gradually, Lily grew stronger. Her breathing stabilized enough to remove the ventilator, and she began gaining weight steadily. The day the neonatologist announced she could try breastfeeding was a milestone that left Sarah weeping with joy. "She's a fighter," Dr. Kim said, watching as Lily successfully latched for the first time, just like her mother. Maxwell, who had stepped out of the room to give Sarah privacy for this moment, returned to find them both glowing with accomplishment. "Look at you two," he said softly, kissing Sarah's forehead. "My amazing girls." The casual possessive made Sarah smile. Despite the trauma of Lily's birth, or perhaps because of it, Maxwell had only grown more devoted to them both. He had arranged for the best specialists, ensured Sarah had everything she needed for recovery, and spent hours beside Lily's incubator, reading to her or simply watching her sleep. 3 weeks after Lily's birth, the doctors finally announced that she was strong enough to go home. Sarah, who had been discharged a week earlier but spent most of her days at the hospital, couldn't contain her tears of joy. "There are still precautions to take," Dr. Kim cautioned. "She'll need more frequent checkups than a full-term baby, and you'll need to be vigilant about potential respiratory issues, but she's ready for the next step." The day they brought Lily home to the penthouse was a quiet celebration. Maxwell had transformed the nursery from merely beautiful to highly functional, adding state-of-the-art monitoring equipment and a comfortable daybed so that someone could easily sleep in the room with her. Sarah's parents helped settle them in, stocking the refrigerator with prepared meals and ensuring everything was arranged for maximum convenience during recovery. As evening approached, they tactfully announced they were returning to their hotel, giving the new family time alone together. After Lily's evening feeding, Sarah gently placed her in the crib, marveling at how the tiny being who had been surrounded by medical equipment just yesterday now lay peacefully in her own nursery. "She looks at home," Maxwell observed from the doorway. "She is home," Sarah replied, adjusting the baby monitor. "We all are." In the living room, Maxwell had prepared a small celebration, a non-alcoholic sparkling cider, a platter of Sarah's favorite foods, and a small wrapped gift box. "What's this?" Sarah asked as he handed her the package. "Open it and see," he encouraged. Inside, nestled on velvet, lay a delicate gold locket. When Sarah opened it, she found 2 perfect miniature photographs, one of Lily in the NICU, tiny but fighting, and one of Maxwell holding Sarah's hand at her hospital bedside. "Our beginning," Maxwell explained, "not the one we expected, but ours nonetheless." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she fastened the locket around her neck. "It's beautiful. Thank you." Maxwell took a deep breath, then knelt before her. "Sarah, before everything happened, I asked you a question. I understand if you need more time, or if your answer has changed given everything we've been through, but—" "Yes," Sarah interrupted, her heart suddenly light despite the exhaustion of the past weeks. "My answer is yes." Maxwell blinked, caught off guard by her directness. "Yes? Yes, I'll marry you," Sarah clarified, smiling through her tears. "If recent events have taught me anything, it's that life is unpredictable and precious. I don't want to waste a moment of it." Maxwell's face transformed with joy as he pulled her gently into his arms. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "I love you both so much." "We love you too," Sarah replied, resting her head on his shoulder, our unexpected hero. As they held each other, the baby monitor captured Lily's soft breathing from the nursery, a rhythmic reminder of the new life they had created together, not through biology, but through choice and commitment. Later that night, as Sarah drifted toward sleep with Maxwell beside her, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From being fired while pregnant to becoming a mother and fiancé in the span of months. None of it had been planned, all of it had been challenging, yet somehow it had led to this moment of unexpected completeness. Their story wasn't a fairy tale, it was something better, something real, with struggle and pain alongside the joy, something they had built together, day by day, choice by choice. Maxwell's arm tightened around her waist, careful of her still healing incision. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured sleepily. "How sometimes the worst day of your life can lead to the best ones," she replied honestly. He smiled against her shoulder. "Remind me to send Thomas and Linda a wedding invitation. They inadvertently gave me the greatest gift of my life." Sarah laughed softly. "Let's not, but I know what you mean." She turned to face him, her expression growing serious. "Thank you for seeing me that day. Really seeing me." "Thank you for letting me," Maxwell replied simply. "For letting me love you both." As they fell asleep in each other's arms, the quiet sounds of their daughter's breathing a gentle backdrop, Sarah felt a peace she had never known before, the peace of being exactly where she was meant to be, with exactly the people she was meant to love. 6 months after Lily's dramatic arrival, life in the Dawson-Morgan household had settled into a rhythm, not quite routine, as nothing with an infant ever truly was, but a pattern of sorts. Lily had thrived beyond the doctor's expectations, her premature birth becoming a part of her story rather than a defining feature. Though still small for her age, she had Maxwell's expressive blue eyes and Sarah's determined temperament. Sarah had returned to work part-time, balancing her executive responsibilities with motherhood. Maxwell had restructured his schedule to be home by 6 most evenings, often completing work after Lily's bedtime rather than missing those precious hours. They had hired a nanny, a warm, experienced woman named Sophia who had previously worked with premature infants, but both parents remained deeply involved in Lily's daily care. The engagement announcement had generated exactly the media attention they'd expected. Business publications speculating about the implications for Dawson Enterprises, society columns dissecting their relationship timeline, tabloids constructing lurid narratives about the pregnant employee who had captured one of the country's most eligible bachelors. "Apparently, I used dark magic and pregnancy hormones to ensnare you," Sarah remarked one morning, scrolling through a particularly creative tabloid story on her tablet. "Also, according to this, Lily is actually the secret love child of you and a European supermodel." Maxwell glanced up from feeding Lily her breakfast, a smear of pureed sweet potato on his otherwise immaculate dress shirt. "That's odd. I could have sworn I was present at her conception." "Sadly, no," Sarah replied with mock seriousness. "You just fell victim to my elaborate scheme to marry into wealth using another man's child as bait." "Diabolical," Maxwell agreed, wiping Lily's mouth as she babbled happily in her high chair. "And yet somehow I find myself not at all unhappy with the results." Sarah set aside the tablet, smiling at the scene before her. CEO Maxwell Dawson, in his designer suit, carefully spoon-feeding their daughter while discussing quarterly projections with his assistant via the earpiece in his left ear. It was a dichotomy that still amused her. The powerful businessman who was completely wrapped around the tiny finger of a 6-month-old. "The Johansson meeting is at 11, she reminded him, gathering her own briefcase. "Martin has the preliminary numbers, but they'll want your final approval on the acquisition terms." Maxwell nodded, seamlessly transitioning between father and executive. "I'll review them before the meeting. Are you sure you don't want to sit in? Your insight on their marketing structure would be valuable." "Can't today," Sarah replied, kissing Lily's head and then Maxwell's cheek. "I'm meeting with the foundation team about the new initiative, but I'll send you my notes from yesterday's review." Their professional relationship had evolved alongside their personal one. Sarah's department now reported to Martin Chen, but she and Maxwell still collaborated regularly on strategic initiatives. They were careful to maintain appropriate boundaries at work, professional language, formal meetings with others present, no displays of affection, but their natural synergy made them a formidable team. "Perfect," Maxwell said. "I should be home by 6, unless you need me to pick up anything for dinner with your parents." Sarah's mother and father were visiting for the weekend, part of the ongoing wedding planning that had occupied much of their free time. "Everything's handled, Mom's making her famous pot roast." After another round of kisses for Lily and a more lingering one for Maxwell, Sarah headed to the office, grateful for the flexible schedule that allowed her these morning moments with her family before diving into work. The foundation meeting ran longer than expected, a productive brainstorming session that generated exciting ideas for expanding New Beginnings to include educational scholarships for the children of single mothers. By the time Sarah returned to her office, it was nearly 4. James was waiting for her, a strange expression on his face. "There you are. You've got a visitor." "I don't have any appointments this afternoon," Sarah replied, checking her calendar to confirm. "It's not on your calendar," James said, his tone cautious. "It's Daniel Harris." Sarah froze. Daniel. Lily's biological father, who had wanted nothing to do with his child, who had suggested Sarah take care of it rather than face responsibility. "He's in the small conference room," James continued. "I didn't know what to tell him, so I said I'd check if you were available." Sarah's mind raced. Why was Daniel here after all this time? What could he possibly want? "Sarah?" James prompted gently. "Should I tell him you're not available?" Taking a deep breath, Sarah shook her head. "No, I'll see him. But would you let Maxwell know? Discreetly." James nodded, understanding the potential complications. "Of course." The small conference room was at the end of the hall, offering privacy for sensitive discussions. Sarah paused outside the door, gathering her composure before entering. Daniel stood looking out the window, his profile exactly as she remembered. Handsome in a conventional way, with the confident posture of someone used to getting what he wanted. He turned as she entered, and she was gratified to see a flicker of surprise cross his face, perhaps at how well she looked. "Sarah," he said, moving toward her with his hand extended. "Thank you for seeing me." She shook his hand briefly, maintaining a professional distance. "Daniel, this is unexpected." He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I know, I probably should have called first." "Probably," Sarah agreed, gesturing for him to sit while taking the chair across from him. "What can I do for you?" Daniel fidgeted with his watch, an expensive timepiece she remembered he'd been very proud of. "I heard you had the baby. A girl, right?" "Yes," Sarah confirmed, offering nothing more. "Let him work for every detail." "And she's healthy? Everything is good?" His awkward concern might have touched her once, but now it only heightened her wariness. "She's perfect," Sarah replied. "No thanks to you." Daniel winced at the deserved rebuke. "I deserve that. I know I handled everything. Badly." "Badly," Sarah repeated flatly. "You suggested I abort my child, then disappeared completely when I refused. Badly doesn't begin to cover it, Daniel." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd once found endearing but now struck her as calculated. "I panicked. I wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility, but I've been doing a lot of thinking and—" He took a deep breath. "I'd like to meet her. My daughter." The request, though not entirely unexpected given his presence, still stunned Sarah. "Why? You made it abundantly clear you wanted no part in her life." "People change," Daniel insisted. "I've changed. I realized I made a terrible mistake walking away from my child." Sarah studied him, trying to discern his true motivation. "This sudden interest wouldn't have anything to do with my engagement to Maxwell Dawson, would it?" A flicker of something, guilt perhaps, or annoyance at being so transparent, crossed Daniel's face. "I won't pretend I haven't seen the news. Congratulations, by the way." "Thank you," Sarah replied dryly. "But you haven't answered my question." Daniel sighed. "Look, seeing those photos of you and Dawson with the baby, my baby, it hit me. That should be me in those pictures. I'm her father." "Biologically, yes," Sarah acknowledged. "But fatherhood is about more than DNA, Daniel. It's about showing up, being present, putting someone else's needs before your own. You've done none of those things." "I want to start," he insisted, leaning forward earnestly. "I have rights, Sarah, legal rights to at least visitation." And there it was, the veiled threat beneath the sudden paternal concern. Before Sarah could respond, a knock at the door preceded Maxwell's entrance. His expression was calm, but Sarah recognized the tension in his jaw, the carefully controlled anger in his eyes. "I hope I'm not interrupting," Maxwell said smoothly, moving to stand beside Sarah's chair. "Maxwell Dawson." He extended his hand to Daniel, who stood to shake it, visibly thrown by the CEO's appearance. "Daniel Harris," he replied, his confident demeanor slipping slightly. "Yes, I know who you are," Maxwell said, his tone pleasant but with an unmistakable edge. "Sarah's former acquaintance." Daniel cleared his throat. "We were just discussing my daughter. I'd like to be part of her life." "Interesting timing," Maxwell observed. "She's 6 months old. Where were you during Sarah's pregnancy? Or during the complications that nearly cost both of them their lives? Or during those weeks in the NICU when we weren't sure if Lily would survive?" Daniel had the grace to look ashamed. "I made a mistake. I'm trying to rectify it." "Noble," Maxwell replied, not bothering to hide his skepticism. "And your sudden interest has nothing to do with the fact that Lily is now being raised in a household with considerable resources and influence?" "That's not fair," Daniel protested weakly. "Neither is appearing out of nowhere and disrupting the life of a child who has never known you," Maxwell countered. His voice remained even, but Sarah could feel his protective anger radiating from him. She placed a calming hand on his arm, then turned to Daniel. "I'm not opposed to you having a relationship with Lily eventually, but it would need to be on terms that prioritize her well-being and stability, not your sudden onset of paternal feeling." Daniel frowned. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means," Maxwell interjected, "that if you're genuinely interested in being part of Lily's life, you'll need to demonstrate commitment and responsibility. Not just show up demanding access because you've seen some photos in the society pages." Sarah nodded in agreement. "Start with a letter of intent. What kind of relationship you envision, what you can offer her, how you plan to be consistent. We can have our lawyers draft a formal agreement that protects everyone's interests, especially Lily's." Daniel's expression shifted from hopeful to calculating. "And if I decide to pursue my rights through the courts instead?" "Then you should know," Maxwell said quietly, "that we have documented every communication, or lack thereof, since Sarah informed you of her pregnancy, including your suggestion that she terminate it and your complete absence during a high-risk pregnancy and premature birth." Sarah added gently, "I don't want a legal battle, Daniel. It wouldn't be good for anyone, least of all Lily. But my priority is her emotional well-being, not your belated desire for fatherhood." For a long moment, Daniel seemed to weigh his options. Finally, he nodded stiffly. "I'll consider your suggestion. You'll hear from me, or my lawyer, soon." After he left, Sarah released a shaky breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Well, that was unexpected. Maxwell pulled her into his arms, his earlier tension melting into concern. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she assured him, though her racing heart suggested otherwise. "Just caught off guard. Do you think he'll actually pursue this legally?" Maxwell considered the question carefully. He might. Men like Daniel don't like being denied what they want, but if he does, we'll handle it together. Sarah rested her head against his chest, drawing strength from his steadfast presence. "I don't want to keep Lily from knowing her biological father if he's genuinely committed, but after everything, I know." Maxwell soothed, stroking her hair. "We'll figure it out. For now, let's go home to our daughter." That evening, after dinner with Sarah's parents and putting Lily to bed, Maxwell and Sarah sat on the terrace of their penthouse, watching the city lights twinkle below. The encounter with Daniel had cast a shadow over the day, raising questions neither had anticipated facing so soon. "What if he does have a legal right to be in her life?" Sarah asked, voicing her deepest fear. "What if he disrupts everything we've built?" Maxwell took her hand, his expression thoughtful. "Then we adapt. We create a new normal that protects Lily while respecting legal realities." He paused, then added, "But Sarah, no court ruling can change what we are to her. You are her mother in every way that matters, and while I may not be her biological father, I love her as my own." "You are her father," Sarah said firmly, in all the ways that truly count." Maxwell smiled, a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. "After we're married, I'd like to adopt her legally, if you're comfortable with that." The suggestion brought tears to Sarah's eyes. "I'd like that too. Very much." As they sat together in the gentle evening breeze, Sarah realized that this latest challenge, like all they had faced before, had only strengthened her certainty in their path forward. Whatever Daniel's intentions, whatever legal complexities might arise, the family they had created remained solid, bound not by biology or legal documents, but by something far more powerful. "We should set a wedding date," she said suddenly. "I'm tired of waiting. Let's make it official." Maxwell's smile was radiant in the dim light. "Name the day, and I'll be there." "Next month," Sarah decided impulsively. "Small ceremony, just family and close friends. No society circus, no media, just us making promises we already live by." "Perfect," Maxwell agreed, sealing the decision with a kiss. "Absolutely perfect." True to Sarah's wishes, wedding preparations unfolded with minimal fanfare. They selected the rooftop garden of Maxwell's favorite boutique hotel, an elegant space offering panoramic city views while accommodating their desire for privacy. The guest list remained deliberately small: Sarah's parents, Maxwell's sister and her family, close friends including James, and a handful of trusted colleagues. The decision to expedite their wedding came partly from their desire to solidify their family and partly as a strategic response to Daniel's unexpected reappearance. In the weeks following their confrontation, Daniel had indeed engaged a lawyer, a slick divorce attorney known for representing wealthy clients in contentious custody battles. "He's filed a petition for paternity testing and visitation rights," Maxwell's family lawyer explained during a meeting in their home office. "Given that he's listed as the father on Lily's birth certificate, the paternity part is a formality, but it shows his intentions." Sarah cradled a sleeping Lily against her shoulder, the baby's gentle weight anchoring her amid the storm of legal complexities. "What are our options?" "Several," the attorney replied. "We could counter with our own petition outlining his abandonment during pregnancy and absence since birth. However, courts generally favor some level of biological parent involvement unless there's evidence of danger to the child." Maxwell, who had been silently taking notes, looked up. "And my adoption petition?" "That becomes more complicated with an objecting biological father," the lawyer admitted. "Not impossible, but more challenging." Sarah and Maxwell exchanged a look of understanding. Their path forward wouldn't be simple, but they would navigate it together. "Let's propose a compromise," Sarah suggested. "Limited supervised visitation that gradually increases if he demonstrates consistency. That way, if this is just a passing interest or attempt to extract financial benefit, it will become apparent without disrupting Lily's life." Maxwell nodded, pride evident in his expression. Sarah's maternal protectiveness had only strengthened her natural strategic thinking. "A reasonable approach," the lawyer agreed. "I'll draft a proposal. In the meantime, proceeding with your marriage and establishing a stable family unit will only strengthen your position." 3 days before the wedding, another unexpected visitor arrived at Dawson Enterprises. Sarah was reviewing campaign materials when Victoria Reed appeared in her doorway, as impeccably styled as ever but lacking her usual imperious demeanor. "Ms. Morgan," Victoria began formally, "may I speak with you briefly?" Surprised but curious, Sarah gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Of course." Victoria sat stiffly, placing a small gift bag on the desk between them. "I understand congratulations are in order for your upcoming wedding." "Thank you," Sarah replied cautiously, uncertain where this conversation was heading. Victoria seemed to struggle with her next words. "I'm aware we've had our differences, particularly regarding your relationship with Maxwell." That was putting it mildly, Sarah thought, but remained silent, allowing Victoria to continue. Recent events have caused me to reevaluate certain perspectives, Victoria said carefully, including my initial assessment of your intentions toward Maxwell and the company. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Recent events? Victoria sighed, her composed facade cracking slightly. I've been observing how you've handled the challenges with your daughter's health, how you've maintained your professional contributions despite personal difficulties, the way you're managing this situation with the biological father. She paused. These are not the actions of someone motivated by opportunism. The acknowledgement, clearly difficult for Victoria to make, surprised Sarah. I appreciate your candor. I still believe office relationships are generally inadvisable, Victoria added, unable to completely abandon her principles. But I recognize that genuine connections can develop in unlikely circumstances. Sarah couldn't suppress a small smile. From Victoria, this was practically a blessing. Maxwell's parents had a genuine connection, Victoria continued, her voice softening. Before William married for social advancement instead, I watched his mother, his real mother, not his father's society wife, build something meaningful from nothing, just as you've done. The personal revelation stunned Sarah. Victoria had never before acknowledged her long history with the Dawson family in such intimate terms. I've known Maxwell since he was born, Victoria said quietly. His well-being has always been my priority, sometimes to the detriment of his happiness. I'm beginning to recognize the distinction. She pushed the gift bag forward. For your daughter. From someone who understands complicated family dynamics. After Victoria left, Sarah opened the bag to find an antique silver rattle, clearly a family heirloom, with a simple note. For Lily, who has taught us all about what truly makes a family. The wedding morning dawned clear and bright, the October air crisp with promise. Sarah stood before the mirror in the hotel suite, her mother adjusting the simple veil attached to her upswept hair. The dress was a departure from traditional bridal white, a pale blush silk that flattered her still recovering figure, with delicate beading along the sweetheart neckline and a modestly flowing skirt. Elegant, understated, and perfectly suited to a woman becoming a wife and already a mother. You look beautiful, sweetheart, her mother said, blinking back tears. I'm so proud of you. Sarah smiled, thinking of the journey that had brought her here, from that devastating day of being fired to this moment of profound joy, a transformation she could never have predicted. Is Lily still sleeping? She asked, glancing toward the adjoining room where her father was watching the baby. Like an angel, her mother confirmed. Your father is sitting guard like she might disappear if he blinks. A knock at the door heralded James's arrival, dapper in his groomsman's suit. Transportation crisis averted, he announced. Maxwell's car is now officially baby seat equipped. His expression softened as he saw Sarah. Wow, the boss is a lucky man. I'm the lucky one, Sarah replied, smoothing her dress. James shook his head. You two and your mutual admiration society. It's disgustingly heartwarming. But his smile betrayed his genuine happiness for them. The ceremony was scheduled for sunset, allowing the city lights to create a magical backdrop as they exchanged vows. As the appointed hour approached, Sarah waited with her father in a small antechamber. Lily, now awake and contentedly nestled in her grandfather's arms. Ready, sweetheart? Her father asked, his voice gruff with emotion. Sarah took a deep breath, centering herself in the moment. More than ready. The rooftop garden had been transformed with simple elegance, white roses and greenery adorning the wooden pergola where Maxwell waited, soft lighting creating a warm glow as twilight descended. A string quartet played gently as the 30 guests turned to watch Sarah's entrance. But Sarah saw only Maxwell, his face illuminated with love as she approached on her father's arm, Lily gurgling happily in her grandfather's embrace. In that moment, all the complications and challenges of their journey faded into the background. This was right. This was family. The officiant, a judge who had been Maxwell's mother's friend, welcomed everyone with warmth and brevity before inviting them to exchange the vows they had written. Maxwell spoke first, his voice steady but charged with emotion. "Sarah, when you walked into my office that day, box of belongings in your arms and fire in your eyes, you changed the course of my life. You showed me what real strength looks like, not power or position, but the courage to stand up for yourself, to create a life on your own terms, to love without reservation." He took her hands in his. "I promise to stand beside you in all things, to be your partner in parenting our beautiful daughter, to support your dreams as fiercely as you've pursued them. I promise to remember every day that love is a choice we make and remake, and I choose you, both of you, without hesitation or reserve." Sarah blinked back tears as she began her own vows. "Maxwell, you saw me at my most vulnerable and recognized not weakness but worth. You've shown me that family isn't defined by biology or convention, but by commitment and care." She squeezed his hands. "I promise to be your partner in all things, in joy and sorrow, in challenge and triumph. I promise to nurture the family we've created, to remind you of your own worth when the world demands too much, and to love you with the same unwavering certainty you've shown me. Today we make official what our hearts have known for months. We belong together, all three of us." As they exchanged rings, Sarah's father stepped forward with Lily, a planned element of their ceremony. Maxwell took the baby in his arms, his expression tender as he addressed her directly. "Lily," he said, his voice soft but audible to the gathered guests, "today I make promises to you as well. I promise to love you as my own daughter, to protect you, guide you, and support you in becoming whoever you choose to be. I promise to respect your history while helping you write your future. I promise that you will always, always know how deeply you are loved." There wasn't a dry eye among the guests as Maxwell placed a tiny silver ring on a chain around Lily's neck, a symbolic token of his commitment to her alongside his vows to Sarah. The judge pronounced them husband and wife with a warm smile, adding, "And may this family, founded in love rather than convention, continue to thrive and grow together." Their first kiss as a married couple was gentle, mindful of the baby between them, but no less passionate for its restraint, a promise of the life they would continue building together. The intimate reception that followed featured dinner under the stars, heartfelt toasts from James and Sarah's father, and a first dance that became a family affair when Lily began fussing and Maxwell simply gathered her into their embrace, the three of them swaying together as their guests watched with misty eyes. Later, as Maxwell danced with Sarah's mother and Sarah took a moment to catch her breath, Victoria approached, more relaxed than Sarah had ever seen her. "It was a beautiful ceremony," Victoria said sincerely, "particularly Maxwell's vows to Lily." "Thank you," Sarah replied, "and thank you for coming. I know it means a lot to him." Victoria nodded, watching Maxwell across the room. "William would have been proud of the man he's become. Not because of the company's success, but because of this." She gestured to the gathering, to the evident love and connection. "This is what he sacrificed and regretted until the end." Before Sarah could respond, Maxwell returned with Lily, who was beginning to show signs of overtiredness. "I think someone needs a quiet moment," he said, bouncing the baby gently. "I'll take her," Sarah offered, but Victoria surprised them both. "May I?" she asked hesitantly. "It's been many years, but I do remember how to calm a fussy baby." Maxwell and Sarah exchanged surprised glances before Maxwell carefully transferred Lily to Victoria's arms. The formidable attorney's expression softened as she held the baby, speaking quietly to her as she moved to a quieter corner of the rooftop. "That was unexpected," Sarah murmured, watching as Lily settled contentedly against Victoria's shoulder. "Very," Maxwell agreed, wrapping an arm around his new wife's waist. "But welcome. Family comes in many forms, it seems." As the evening wound down, with Lily now peacefully asleep in the portable crib they'd set up in a quiet room adjacent to the reception, Maxwell led Sarah to a private corner of the rooftop with a spectacular view of the illuminated city. "Happy?" he asked, drawing her into his arms. "Completely," she confirmed, resting her head against his chest. "And you?" "More than I knew was possible," Maxwell replied, his voice rich with contentment. As they stood together, new rings catching the soft light, Sarah reflected on the unpredictable path that had led them here. What had begun as professional injustice had somehow transformed into the greatest blessing of her life, not just a husband who adored her or a secure future for her daughter, but a family created through choice rather than chance. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: Daniel's legal maneuvers, Lily's development, the ongoing balance of career and family. But tonight, in the warm circle of her husband's arms, with their daughter sleeping peacefully nearby, Sarah knew with bone-deep certainty that they would face whatever came next together. Their unexpected family bound by something stronger than circumstance or convention. Love, choice, commitment, family. 1 year later, Sarah stood in Lily's nursery, watching her daughter pull herself up on the furniture, determined to master walking before her approaching first birthday. The room had evolved alongside Lily, stuffed animals and picture books now occupying shelves that had once held only decorative items, a play area in the corner filled with developmentally appropriate toys, photos of their growing family adorning the walls. "She's getting more confident," Maxwell observed from the doorway, home early from the office. He crossed the room to join them, kneeling to Lily's level. "Aren't you, sweetheart? Ready to take those first steps any day now?" Lily babbled happily in response, reaching for her father with chubby hands. Maxwell scooped her up, his face lighting with the joy that always appeared when he held his daughter. The past year had brought both challenges and triumphs. Daniel's custody petition had progressed through the courts with predictable legal maneuvering on both sides. After several months of supervised visitation, during which his interest had noticeably waned when he realized no financial gain would come from his efforts, they had reached a settlement. Daniel would have monthly visitation rights, gradually increasing as Lily grew older, but primary custody and decision-making authority remained firmly with Sarah and Maxwell. "Did you get the final adoption papers?" Sarah asked, straightening a stack of board books on the shelf. Maxwell nodded, his expression solemn yet jubilant. "Signed by the judge this morning. As of today, Lily is legally my daughter as well as yours. Lily Morgan Dawson in every sense." Sarah crossed to embrace them both, her heart full. The adoption process had been complicated by Daniel's initial objections, but after months of mediation and legal negotiations, he had finally signed the consent forms, allowing Maxwell to legally become Lily's father while maintaining his own visitation rights. "We should celebrate," Sarah said, kissing Maxwell's cheek and then Lily's forehead. "Family dinner tonight?" "Already planned," Maxwell replied with a grin. "Your parents are on their way from the airport as we speak, and Maria has been cooking all day." Maria, their now full-time housekeeper, had developed a special bond with Lily and took great pride in creating elaborate meals for family celebrations. Sarah's parents, who had moved to the city 6 months ago to be closer to their only grandchild, were regular fixtures in their home. "You're always one step ahead," Sarah said admiringly. "I try," Maxwell replied, passing Lily back to her as his phone chimed with a message. "That's probably the car service confirming they picked up your parents. Let me check." As Maxwell stepped into the hallway to take the call, Sarah sat in the rocking chair with Lily, savoring this quiet moment amid their busy lives. Balancing motherhood with her career continued to present challenges, but the past year had taught her much about priorities and boundaries. After returning from her maternity leave, she had made a controversial decision to reduce her role at Dawson Enterprises, stepping down as executive marketing director to become a strategic consultant for the foundation and select company projects. The move had raised eyebrows among those who saw her as abandoning her hard-won position, But Sarah had recognized something important about herself during those early months with Lily. She loved her work, the creativity, the challenges, the sense of accomplishment, but she loved her daughter more. And unlike her own mother, who had been forced to work multiple jobs out of financial necessity, Sarah had the privilege of choice. She could design a career that complemented her family life rather than competing with it. Maxwell, to his credit, had supported her decision completely. "Your talent doesn't diminish with fewer hours," he'd said when she presented her proposal. "The company benefits from your contribution in whatever capacity works for your life." Their professional relationship had shifted accordingly. Sarah now led the foundation's expansion efforts, bringing new beginnings to 5 cities with plans for 5 more. She developed marketing strategies for Dawson's philanthropic initiatives and consulted on major campaigns, working primarily from a home office with 2 days a week at headquarters. The arrangement wasn't perfect. There were still late nights and occasional weekend work for both of them, but they had found a rhythm that preserved family time while honoring their professional commitments. "Your parents are 15 minutes out," Maxwell announced, returning to the nursery. "And your mother is apparently bringing another hand-knitted sweater for Lily." Sarah laughed. "That makes what, 12 now? Lily will need a separate closet just for Grandma's knitwear." "I think it's sweet," Maxwell said, sitting on the window seat. "My mother never had the chance to spoil me that way. I'm glad Lily has that experience." Sarah studied her husband, noting how parenthood had softened some of his edges while sharpening others. He was still the brilliant, decisive CEO, but he had learned to delegate more effectively, to prioritize with greater clarity. Family dinner was sacred, barring international emergencies. Weekends included dedicated Lily time regardless of market fluctuations or corporate crises. "I have news," she said, adjusting Lily on her lap. "I wasn't going to share it until tomorrow, but since we're celebrating today anyway." Maxwell raised an eyebrow. "Good news, I hope?" "Very good," Sarah confirmed, unable to contain her smile. "The doctor confirmed it yesterday. We're having another baby, due in about 7 months." Maxwell's expression transformed from surprise to utter joy. He crossed the room in 2 strides, kneeling before Sarah and Lily, one hand reaching to rest gently on Sarah's still flat stomach. "Another baby," he whispered, awe in his voice. "Are you feeling all right? No complications?" "Everything looks perfect," she assured him. "The doctor says there's no reason to expect any issues this time. Different pregnancy, different circumstances." After Lily's traumatic birth and Sarah's emergency hysterectomy, they had assumed their family was complete. But during a routine checkup 6 months ago, Sarah's doctor had mentioned something unexpected. One of her ovaries remained functional. While natural conception was impossible due to the hysterectomy, IVF was a viable option if they wished to expand their family. The discussion had evolved slowly over weeks of careful consideration. The procedure would carry risks, as all pregnancies do, but nothing approaching the danger of Sarah's previous experience. After consultations with specialists and much soul-searching, they had decided to try just once with Maxwell's sperm and Sarah's harvested eggs. "A sibling for Lily," Maxwell said softly, watching as the toddler played with his watch strap, blissfully unaware of the momentous news. "A child that's part of both of us." "I've already started thinking about names," Sarah admitted. "Too soon?" Maxwell shook his head, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Not at all. I may have a list myself." The sound of the elevator chime announced the arrival of Sarah's parents. As Maxwell went to greet them, Sarah remained in the nursery a moment longer, savoring the private joy before sharing it with the family. "You're going to be a big sister," she whispered to Lily, who responded with a drooly smile. "Our family is growing, little one." The evening unfolded with the warmth and chaos that characterized their family gatherings. Sarah's mother fussed over Lily's newest developmental milestones while her father and Maxwell discussed the foundation's expansion plans. Maria served a spectacular meal that had everyone groaning with satisfied pleasure. And when Sarah shared their news, her parents' enthusiastic response brought fresh tears to her eyes. Later, after Lily had been tucked into bed and her parents had retired to the guest suite, Sarah and Maxwell stood on the terrace, enjoying the crisp autumn evening. A year into marriage, they had settled into a partnership that balanced Maxwell's natural protectiveness with Sarah's independence, his strategic thinking with her creative vision, his family wealth with her practical resourcefulness. "Happy?" Maxwell asked, echoing the question he'd posed on their wedding night. Sarah leaned against him, his arm around her shoulders, keeping her warm against the evening chill. "Incredibly. You?" "Beyond measure," he replied, his hand drifting to rest protectively over her stomach. "If someone had told me 2 years ago that firing a pregnant employee would lead to all this, I'd have questioned their sanity." Sarah laughed softly. "Life's funny that way. The worst moments sometimes lead to the best." They stood in companionable silence, watching the city lights twinkle below. Sarah thought about how drastically her life had changed since that devastating day in Linda's office. The pink slip that had seemed like the end of her career had actually been the beginning of something far more precious, a family built on choice rather than obligation, on love rather than convention. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day?" she asked suddenly. "When you called me into your office?" Maxwell smiled against her hair. "I believe I said you were right, that you were being terminated because you were pregnant, not because of your performance." "And then you fixed it," Sarah said softly. "You made it right." "I'd like to think we made it right together," Maxwell corrected gently. "You were willing to give me a chance when you had every reason to be suspicious of my motives." Sarah turned in his arms to face him. "Best decision I ever made." "Second best," Maxwell countered with a grin, after deciding to keep Lily. "Fair point," Sarah conceded, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. "That decision gave me everything." As they returned inside, Sarah paused at Lily's doorway, watching their daughter sleep peacefully, unaware of how her very existence had transformed so many lives, not just her parents, but those of countless other single mothers who now benefited from the expanded resources of new beginnings, inspired by Lily's journey. 5 years ago, Sarah had imagined a very different life for herself. Professional success, perhaps, but solitary in many ways. Now her heart and home overflowed with love, with family both biological and chosen, with purpose that transcended corporate achievement. And it had all begun with a pink slip and a man willing to stand up for what was right. "Coming to bed?" Maxwell called softly from their room. "In a minute," Sarah replied, still watching Lily's gentle breathing. In the quiet nursery, surrounded by the evidence of their shared life, the photos, the toys, the books they read together each night, Sarah offered a silent prayer of gratitude for unanswered expectations and unexpected blessings, for the courage to face adversity and the wisdom to recognize love when it appeared in unlikely circumstances, for the family they had created together, one choice at a time. The pink slip that had once seemed like her greatest professional failure had led her to her greatest personal joy. The pregnancy that had cost her one job had given her a life beyond anything she could have imagined. A daughter who filled her days with wonder, a husband who partnered with her in all things, and now a new life growing within her, expanding their family circle once more. Sarah gently closed Lily's door and moved down the hallway toward the bedroom she shared with Maxwell, toward the future they would continue building together, one day at a time. Sometimes, she reflected, the very circumstances that seem designed to break us are actually laying the foundation for our greatest happiness. If only we have the courage to keep moving forward, to remain open to unexpected possibilities, to recognize love when it appears, even in the most unlikely places, to build family from choice rather than chance. to transform endings into beginnings. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen